Why, hello there. To receive each episode of Sacred Symbols 3 days earlier than the public, totally ad-free. To have your questions, comments, and concerns read on the air. To hear your name in the end credits, and to score other cool perks. Please consider supporting this show on Patreon at patreon.com/CollinsLastStand. Not only will your subscription net you benefits for Sacred Symbols and allow this show to continue into the future, but those benefits also carry over to other CLS shows too, including the video game-centric YouTube show SideQuest, the retro and nostalgia-themed podcast Knockback, and the eclectic interview series Fireside Chats. In other words, you're getting insane bang for your buck. Again, that's patreon.com/CollinsLastStand. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. Without you, Sacred Symbols and CLS couldn't and wouldn't exist. Now, on to the show. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to the Sacred Symbols of PlayStation podcast. This is, I believe, episode 17. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my co-host, Chris Raygun.
How's it going?
It's going well. I'm very tired.
Yeah.
A lot to do.
So am I. Jesus.
A lot of things. Yeah, tell me about your life. How is your life?
I've just been editing constantly, and I didn't realize it until this week that I was editing 4 different things at once, which is not usual for me. So I'm way slower than I usually am because I'm constantly splitting focus. How
do you keep your focus on one project to the next? I'm not very good at doing that.
I don't. I usually just find something that I want to talk about, write it out, film it, edit it on one sitting. But lately I've just been going all over the place and doing a bunch of different things. So I've been leaving stuff kind of on the back burner. And I'll get back to it later, and then I have another idea, and then I start that, and then the same thing happens, and now I have 4 different things.
Well, it's not a bad problem necessarily.
No.
Working 100-hour weeks.
200-hour weeks.
200-hour weeks.
Is that possible?
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Downright implausible, you might say.
A little time dilation. It's all relative. Yeah. Now, Chris, I appreciate you being here with me today, and I appreciate the audience listening to our show, Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, ostensibly a PlayStation podcast. Sometimes it's about other random things as well, and we'll get into some of those things in our corrections and notes as we move into the show. But of course, you can support Sacred Symbols and all things Collins Last Stand on Patreon at patreon.com/CollinsLastStand. Doing so not only nets you perks and all sorts of neat, nifty things for Sacred Symbols, but also for Fireside Chats, my eclectic interview series, Knockback, my retro and nostalgia podcast series, and SideQuest, which is my YouTube gaming series, which is typically reviews or op-eds and stuff like that. And supporting us on Patreon, particularly with Sacred Symbols, allows you early ad-free access to each episode 3 days early and allows you to interact with the show because, of course, we litter a smorgasbord, a veritable smorgasbord of your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas as we move forward with this show. Now, Chris, I want to start with a serious note. This is totally random, but as a Long Islander and as a huge Islanders fan, I do want to say rest in peace, Charles Wong, who was the owner of the New York Islanders, who passed away yesterday. He was the minority owner at this point of the New York Islanders. I'm simply saying that because he's the reason that the Islanders stayed on Long Island. They would have moved to Kansas City or Quebec, and I am deeply indebted to him as a sports fan. And I was actually, when I saw this on my Twitter feed yesterday, you see people die and pass away, and it happens. It's life and death.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be flippant about it, but you see these things every once in a while, and you're like, okay, that's sad, and you move on with your life. But I was quite struck with sadness when I saw this.
Really?
And so, yes, I really was.
Did you mist?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Because you have to understand, I love the Islanders. They're one of my favorite things in the world, and they were an inch away from moving from Long Island, and he's the one who jumped in and paid a ton of money to keep them there and ran the team at a loss for many years and did all those kinds of things and was a true Long Islander, a true philanthropist, and all those kinds of things. And so I want to give a quick RIP to my dude, Charles Wong. We'll see you on the other side. Now, the other thing that I want to bring up, Chris, before we get into anything, let's keep the serious stuff at the top.
Okay.
And then we'll quickly get into some shittiness. Is some people have been asking about our access to games and why we hadn't covered or talked about Game X, Game Y, Game Z, or whatever. And I think it's relevant for our show to stay above board with our audience and be totally honest and candid with them, because the reason that I think a lot of people like our show and like what we do in the gaming realm is because we just tell it like it is. I don't try to go out of my way to please anyone. I just try to tell you what's on my mind and, et cetera and so on. Well, it seems like a few people had been interested in why we didn't cover Assassin's Creed Odyssey and why we hadn't talked about Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Right.
And This actually is something that I wanted to talk with the audience about because really we're at the behest of the access we're given by publishers, and different publishers work with us at different, kind of capacities. Like Konami recently showed an interest in working with us about Castlevania. That's really cool. We work obviously with Sony, we work with Square Enix, we work with Bethesda, we work with lots of different publishers. And one publisher that honestly doesn't seem that interested to work with us is Ubisoft. And we are super interested in covering their games moving forward. And I've had some back and forth with them, usually ignored emails that I've sent to them, and not only about Far Cry 5, but about Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And, they didn't send us copies of the game. They kind of just ignored our emails and our inquiries and told us that they couldn't help us. And we're going to treat every company and every publisher and every game completely equally and completely fairly, regardless of if we give or given access to those games or not. But it's important for you guys to know that we just simply do not seem to have access to this particular publisher's run of games. And so we're happy to go out and buy those games when the time comes. I think this will probably come to a head for us when we want to play The Division in Q1. Chris and I will obviously go out and try to grab those and give you as quick kind of takes as we can. But unfortunately, we're kind of hamstrung by, the access we're given. And no one owes us any access. No one owes us a goddamn thing. There's not a single publisher or developer that owes us anything. But with Ubisoft in particular, I know people have been inquiring about why we are not able to talk about Assassin's Creed or why we haven't been able to talk about the game. And I wanted to make it clear that we certainly tried, and I certainly tried, and they just don't seem to be interested in working with us. So maybe that will be ameliorated in the future. I don't know. But as Sacred Symbols is a show about honesty and candor, I want to be honest and candid about what's going on the back end too. And we want to obviously thank the many publishers and developers that do work with us. We appreciate them very much.
Yeah. Hopefully it gets resolved by the time they decide to pull Splinter Cell out of the grave.
We'll see.
That would be great.
We'll see. That would be nice. Now, I did send them a really nice long email and basically said at the end, like, if you don't want to work with us, just can you tell me so I can waste my time doing other things instead of trying to get, access from you guys. And they ignored that email. Although, to be fair, when I got an email for Assassin's Creed Odyssey from them the day it came out with some form thing saying, sorry, we can't help you this time, I did send a snarky email back saying, thank you so much for your timely response to my inquiry. Since I could have literally gone out and purchased it myself. So, yeah. Is it complicated? Not really. It's really not that complicated. I send pretty polite, pretty kind emails out to all the publishers asking them what I can do to kind of gain access if they need data and they need information. 9 out of 10 publishers, very kind, very easy, very quick. And I want to give a shout out to them as well. And yeah, hopefully, Ubisoft comes around and wants to work with us. But in the meantime, we will treat their games fairly. We will treat their games accurately. And I am happy to go out and buy their games, which is exactly what I did, by the way, when they denied me access to Far Cry 5 earlier this year. No problem at all. Big fan of their games. But do want people to know moving forward that with stuff like The Division, we might not be able to talk about it with the rest of the industry, which is unfortunate. Chris, episode 16, which was last week's episode of Sacred Symbols, I'll have you know, was the first episode, as far as I can tell, and some of the audience did write in about this. You did not mention Doom for the first time on episode 16 of Sacred Symbols.
That's a failure on my part, in my opinion.
Some might look at it as a triumph.
Nah, Doom needs more recognition.
Oh, well, fair enough. I wanted to throw that out there because I edit every episode. By the way, sorry for the weird kind of edit that's probably there. I just burped as I was talking, and I didn't assume anyone wanted to hear that, but you never know. But yeah, you didn't mention it, Chris, so either a triumph or a failure, depending on how you look at it.
Column A, column B.
Matthew Hamilton wrote into us and said, hey, Chris, is a Pop-Tart a ravioli?
Oh, my God. Look. Fine. I yield. It's a ravioli. Everything is in everything.
Right. Everything is everything. I thought you'd like that. We're going to stop using those. People are sending in some really deep ones. Also some pretty crude ones.
Yeah?
There was one about who would you rather do that. Now, we have done Fuck, Marry, Kill before, and I'm totally fine with that. That's obviously an age-old game, Chris.
Yes.
But when people are being quite crude with what they're asking, what we'd rather do to this guy or this girl or whatever, fictional characters usually, I'm like, even I have to draw the line somewhere, Yeah. I want to be NC-17. Let's say that, I don't want to be, I want to be a little rated R, I guess.
NC-17 is like a bad one, isn't it?
Oh,
it's
NC-17,
worse than R.
It is. So, I want to do it. I do want to be NC-17. That is kind of what I want to be. I don't want to be X.
No.
No one's going to see any dicks on this show. Well, it's a podcast.
You don't want to be like Leisure Suit Larry.
Exactly.
AO.
I don't want to say you're not going to see any dicks. You're obviously not going to see any dicks. You're not going to hear any dicks.
You're not going to see any dicks on this audio.
You're not going to hear like a slapping noise like that or anything. Well, not that you would know where it came from anyway. So Chris does conclude that a Pop-Tart is a ravioli. And we're going to give that line of questioning that drives Chris insane a little bit of a rest, but we'll bring it back at an unknown point in the
Oh,
future.
thank goodness.
Chris, I want to talk about Red Dead Redemption 2 real quick because you and I did a special episode of Sacred Symbols about Spider-Man, a one-off about PlayStation 4 Spider-Man. People really liked it. I enjoyed it. I think you enjoyed doing it as well. We went a little over an hour, took a bunch of audience questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from Patreon, and made something of it. And I think we should do that for Red Dead Redemption 2.
Absolutely.
So Red Dead launches at the end of this week. As you're listening to this, it should be out if you're listening on public feeds. And so Chris is going to need, and I'm going to need time to play through the game. So I'm thinking like in 2 weeks or so, we'll convene and do an episode right after we record, say episode 18 or 19, and we'll put that up on the feed so that everyone can enjoy it. And we'll have an entire robust episode about Red Dead Redemption. As I promised, we're going to do this for big games moving forward. The Division 2 is one of those games I wanted to do it for.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll be able to do that as well in the future.
I mean, Red Dead's also a massive, massive game, so
yeah, it's supposed to be very big.
Take some time.
Exactly. So we want to take our time. We want to do it right. We also want to give everyone out there the time to play the game so they can submit their questions and their inquiries on Patreon. So that's something that's going to happen. That will be the next special episode, and it will not replace an episode of the show. So you'll get a normal episode that week and then a Red Dead episode that week as well, and we'll kind of segregate the conversation of Red Dead from the normal episode so we can have a normal flow of show. Does that make sense to you, Chris?
Yeah.
Also, what is this military hat you're wearing?
Huh? Oh, I ran out of hats.
Oh.
And I didn't wash my hair, so this is the last hat I had. I got to get the patch taken off.
Yeah,
or covered.
Where does it
otherwise
from?
It's stolen valor. It's my dad's.
Oh, it's your dad's? Yeah, it is stolen valor.
Yeah. Oh, well.
I like that kind of that camo, that like digital camo.
Yeah. It's a digital camo patrol cap. I like patrol caps a lot. I hate... What are these hats that have like the flat... They're like baseball hats, but they have like the flat brims.
Like baseball hats that aren't bent, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see a lot of people wear those.
I don't like it.
No, I don't like that either.
I like it.
Do you like it that some people keep the sticker on the hat as well? Have you noticed that? As if it's like brand new. They leave the little foil sticker on it.
No, because it's faded and broken and disgusting. It's like it's a disheveled looking hat with a fake sticker on it. Stop it.
It's funny to me because, I used to wear a Yankee hat every day for much of my life, and my Yankee hat was like the rattiest thing. I don't think it's cool to do anymore, but when I was in college and high school, it was cool to like bend the hat and then it would get all frayed in the front, so it would look like really worn. That was what was cool when I was a youth.
Yeah, I think I remember that being a cool thing.
But I don't think that's cool anymore.
No, you got to have it look pristine.
I don't think that's cool anymore. Rachel Henley wrote into us and said, "Hey, both really enjoying the podcast. As I knew of Chris prior to Sacred Symbols, it's a really cool combination of personalities."
Oh,
thank you,
look at
Rachel.
that.
Do you guys ever see yourselves perhaps doing a special Let's Play or video content related to video games in the future? I love the work that you both do and appreciate that it simply might not be plausible given both of your intense work schedules. Much love and support from Wales in the UK.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
That is a lot of work.
That's a lot of work for both of our schedules.
Indeed.
Colin works like 200, 300 hour, 400 hour, 500 hour weeks over here in...
I never stop. In the time dilation. I'm moving almost at the speed of light, and things happen way quicker on Earth than they do indeed for me, so the hours all get lost in there. I've been reading The Expanse. That's why I have that in my mind.
Exactly.
Now, Chris, I do like the idea of us doing more together, and Chris and I actually went out to lunch right around the time we started doing Sacred Symbols to talk about how we might be able to work together in an expanded way in the future, because I really like Chris, and I like his work ethic, and I like his humor and all those kinds of things, and to maybe more permanently collaborate in some way in the future with some of our friends. And I'd like to do something like that, and maybe we will do something like that in the future, but for right now, we're pretty maxed out.
Yeah.
So,
maybe at some point we can fly like Bunty out, and we could do like a record a bunch in like a few hours, and then put it out. I'd be down to edit that.
Yeah,
that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's fun. We can do that. We can get Bunty out for as quickly as possible, get him back on the plane, and send him back to Canada where he belongs.
Fly him back on the same day.
Yeah. Yeah, have him come in on a red-eye land, Montreal to LA, 8 a.m. or so Pacific.
Yeah.
We'll get him back on the plane, maybe Air Canada, 6, 7 o'clock back. See you later, Bunty. Get the hell out of here. Let's talk about what we're playing. Chris, are you playing anything these days?
No, I've been editing and just watching a bunch of Netflix, honestly, this week. I played a little bit more of Spider-Man, got some more trophies.
Oh.
I'm slowly getting all these crimes done. I can't find this last freaking, what do you call this, secret photo ops? I can't find this last, 50th one. I don't know where the hell it is.
Really? It's not showing up on the map?
It doesn't show up on it. You have to, pass it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
You should just use a guide or something and try to find it.
Yeah, then I got to go through 50 possible locations.
I know, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to be a completionist. Now, you did try to cop out on the platinum this weekend of Spider-Man.
I did.
Sent you...
man, there's a lot more trophies now. I guess I can't get this platinum.
I know. I hammered that down real quick. Because I sent Chris, we got codes from Sony for the DLC, which I've not played yet. I don't think Chris has played yet either. He's been busy. But we got codes for it, and it added new trophies. And there's actually new trophies for everybody because New Game Plus is a free update, and those added new trophies as well. But Chris was like, oh, now I have all these other trophies. And I was like, no, only the core game counts towards the platinum, so there's no excuses, and I'll be waiting.
All right.
1 in 10 people that have played that game have the platinum trophy.
Okay, all right.
Inexcusable. Inexcusable.
I tried the New Game Plus, by the way.
Yeah?
It's fun. I like it.
I don't know if I would like it or not. You start with all your powers and your suits and everything like that?
Yeah, you start with all your powers and your suits, and you're fast as hell in the beginning, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, so you probably beat it real quick then.
Maybe. Case. It is kind of a long game with the mandatory lulls.
You know, I forgot to talk about that. I don't like that.
The mandatory lulls?
Yeah, where it's like, take some time and do some shit. And I'm like, it's not really the spirit of the open world. I'll do that all when I want to do that.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I didn't mind it too much, but it did mess with the pacing a little bit. Yeah.
No more Black Ops 4 for you?
I've been playing a little bit of it. I'm slowly getting my feet wet with the multiplayer. I'm starting to figure things out. I'm starting to get a little bit better at it. I've consistently improved like the KD and all that. But there's a story that we're going to talk about in the main like news section of this that is kind of emblematic of one of the major issues I have with it. So I'm just going to save it for that.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I brought that story in actually. That was the last story I put into the run because of what you said last week.
It's very recent, and I'm glad it's in here.
Excellent. Well, I beat Hollow Knight finally a few days ago, which I'm really proud of. It's a great game. Highly recommended. I got 104% completion out of 112%. I just had to move on. And there's some really tough shit in there that you really got to sit down and do, like some tough kind of enemy gauntlet things and some optional bosses. So I'd like to go back to it and maybe get the platinum. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but very well done to, I think Team Cherry is the developer. Very well done, an Australian team. Really great game. You guys can play that on PS4. You can play it on Xbox One, and you can play it on Switch as well, and PC. And otherwise, I am embargoed and can't talk to you about what I'm playing, but we'll have more information on that next week. So stay tuned for that. Chris.
Yes.
Shall we get into the news?
Yes, let us do this.
Number 1, Days Gone has officially been delayed.
Look at that.
Sony Bend's PS4 exclusive third-person open-world action game, which takes place in the American Pacific Northwest and deals with zombified creatures called freakers, was originally slated to launch on February 22nd of 2019. They insist they're not zombies.
I really hate that. I really just call them zombies. It's fine.
Clickers and freakers and whatever.
Clickers, yeah. I get to a degree, right? Because they're not technically zombies, but like freakers sounds like a 9-year-old trying to curse.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, freakers. Yeah, it's a little weird. I'm excited about it though. It will now come out on April 26th of 2019, a little over 2 months later. Word comes by way of the PlayStation blog, which notes that Sony, quote, recently decided to move the release of Days Gone from the crowded February timeframe, end quote, and that, quote, Bend Studio will take the opportunity to further polish Days Gone, end quote. Sony Bend last released a game in late 2011 when its Vita launch title Uncharted Golden Abyss came out in Japan. By the time Days Gone launches in April, it would have been some 7.5 years in between releases for the team. So this is obviously the big news, and we're going to get into some questions because I've already integrated, as I often do, user inquiries into this very question. Luis Enrique wrote into us on Patreon and said, as we await the, quote, yet another zombie game, end quote, from Sony, would this mean the predicted time frame for The Last of Us 2 would be much further than summer 2019 since they are slightly close to each other? What do you make of this? These are somewhat similar. I don't want to say that they're similar games in everything, but in some regards, they're very similar.
They're thematically pretty close, I think. Just like the overall like realistic kind of zombie, dreadful atmosphere kind of deal.
Right. What do you make of this? Do you think this means The Last of Us 2 is certainly not going to be in its June timeframe, I would assume, that we thought it was going to be in?
No, I think it's still in the June timeframe. I think they just straight up pushed it closer to The Last of Us. I don't even think they fully understand what they did here, to be completely honest, because I don't see any reason for Naughty Dog not to launch in summer. They would dominate the conversation. It's a huge game. It's hugely anticipated. They would have no reason to push into fall, I think. I think that would be just kind of dumb. I don't know if it's that good of a call, to be honest.
So you don't think that them getting it out of the way of that February crush with, there's a lot of Sekiro and Anthem and Division and a lot of games coming out at that time. Yeah, Crackdown.
It is a crowded release window. But I think pushing it closer to The Last of Us, it doesn't hurt The Last of Us. I think it hurts Days Gone more than it does The Last of Us.
Sure. Yeah, I think that they, on one hand, must have helped it by moving it out of that time frame. But again, what we don't know is what's coming after it. And we're making assumptions that The Last of Us would come out in that summer time frame.
That is an assumption.
I mean, I have to disagree with you. I think that they would have to be smart enough, or you would hope that Sony is smart enough to say, like, we can't release not only 2 zombie kind of first-party games next to each other, but just 2 first-party games next to each other like that anyway. When they're
Yeah.
only releasing 2 or 3 a year of any consequence, I don't know that you should be releasing them within 2 months of each other, especially when they're so thematically similar.
Oh yeah, no, I don't disagree that would be dumb. I just wonder how aware they are that that's even a thing. Because I personally think the reason that they even scheduled Days Gone for that crowded release window in the first place was because they weren't really paying that much attention to it compared to The Last of Us or compared to even later things like Kojima's new project. I think it's very much it is a first party game, but I think it's very much kind of being treated as like a third party thing, like at least internally. That's the sense that I get looking at like how they've treated it, and like the fact that we didn't get any real showcase of it at E3, even though it was like closer than
Right.
That was weird to me. That like The Last of Us is further away than Days Gone, but we got a whole thing for The Last of Us and nothing for Days Gone at E3.
Yeah, presumably all of those games are actually further away than Days Gone would have been, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because, you have The Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima,
I
Death
doubt.
Stranding.
Yeah. Granted, this is the assumption that they were always launching in summer. We could be wrong on that, but I don't know. I don't think they fully get what they've done here.
I wonder if it would have been an option, although it's unlikely because of how, much development ramps up in difficulty and kind of polishing and doing everything at the end. If they could have actually pushed it to January, pushed it up, which would have been super interesting to kind of get it out of there and, be the first mass appeal AAA game that comes out. Because I kind of agree with you that Sony does treat this game a little bit differently, and it's been treated differently from the get-go. Like, this game isn't even running on proprietary Sony engines like all the other Sony games are.
Is it really not?
No, it's running on Unreal, I think. And so that in and of itself is very strange that they would let one of their first parties kind of go out of the ecosystem while they're pretty much obsessed with proprietary engines otherwise. So for me, I look at it and I see a situation where I think The Last of Us can't possibly come out close to Days Gone. And I'm wondering if The Last of Us maybe is an August game. But what's funny about this, Chris, is that it then puts my whole hypothetical calendar into complete disarray moving forward, because you also have to throw Dreams in there somewhere. And I don't know if that's really going to matter, if that's going to pop. I really don't believe that game's going to matter to many people and that game is going to pop. I just believe that that's not going to be the case. But then you have Ghost of Tsushima, which I thought was going to be a fall game, Death Stranding maybe in 2020. So this is kind of pushing everything down the line. And so the only two answers are the three answers are either our timetable's totally off, which is possible, of course.
Oh, yeah.
That they're going to release these games in close proximity to each other because they just have to get them out, or they're going to start spreading and staggering these games out, especially because of what we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, when they were saying, well, we might have potentially 3 more years of PS4, in which case they can kind of spread these things out, maybe punt The Last of Us Part 2 to 2020, something like that.
Maybe. I don't see them punting The Last of Us for Days Gone.
As far as I understand, The Last of Us 2 is a 2019 game. I think they've said that.
They've definitely said that.
So
I don't know. We'll see.
Antonio Pereira wrote into us, Chris, and said, "Hey, Colin and Chris, I thought it was pretty interesting for Sony Bend to acknowledge that they're moving the release date of Days Gone because it's a crowded month. Do you think this hurts the game's image? It's been an uphill battle for this game since it was announced, and I'm not sure that many people are really anticipating it. I could be wrong, but I'd like to hear your thoughts." This is interesting because by acknowledging weakness in a way, Chris, by saying like we have to get this game out of this window because of everything else that's coming out at that window, it's almost like musical chairs where everyone's waiting for the music to stop and then someone has to go and the weakest goes.
Yeah.
And so I do wonder if it affects the optics.
I think it probably does to the people who are more tuned into this kind of thing. I think obviously the general population probably isn't going to really be affected by this at all. But I think the people who are paying attention I think this is a bit of a red flag for anybody who's kind of in the know. Yeah.
I'm still excited about it. I'm looking forward to it.
I hope it succeeds. Because you said that you don't think that they could possibly release 2 zombie games so close to each other. It was baffling to me that they even took on 2 zombie first-party projects in the same 2 years. To be honest, like to me, that was a baffling decision. To me, it's just the thematic elements of Days Gone just seem really off. I feel like they would have had a really great game if they had kind of did it tongue-in-cheek, kind of like almost like a parody of The Last of Us type. I think that would have been a little bit more interesting. It would have justified the motorcycle, which to me makes no sense in a zombie apocalypse world that is supposed to be very, very serious and like have a very serious tone, that you would drive around the loudest vehicle ever created short of jets.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never really thought about that. I wonder how they deal with that in the game. I wonder.
The premise feels wacky. Like, it feels like a wacky thing. Like, this biker motorcycle guy is driving around in this zombie it feels weird.
Like Dead Rising-ish.
It feels Dead Rising-ish, like one of those Capcom games. But it's played totally straight, and I wonder how... I don't know. There's something about it that's just really off. I hope it does well, And I'm excited to play it because it does look ridiculous. But we'll just have to see, I guess.
From a purely genetic standpoint, I'm interested in it because it's so different compared to what Bend usually made. And it's also been forever since Bend released a game. And I think that it was greenlit. I mean, dude, I heard about this game. I was long before I left IGN. I was hearing about this game. And as I've said before, it was originally called, or at least codenamed, Dead Don't Ride. And it was something that I was hearing about forever. And my assumption about its timing and why Sony kind of got on board with two different zombie type games with The Last of Us sequel and with this game is because I think this game was supposed to be done a long time ago. I think that's part of the reason why they did it. You know, it wasn't supposed to be coming out the same year or anywhere near, I think, with The Last of Us's sequel. So
I feel like they would be better off delaying Days Gone then into like maybe fall. The game's already been in development for like ages anyway.
But again, we're all focusing this on our assumption.
That's true, yeah.
You know, that The Last of Us is coming out.
It's all complete speculation.
It is. It's totally speculative. So again, I'm more intrigued by the opportunity of maybe pushing it forward, which happens every once in a while. They probably were not in a position to be able to do that. But yeah, to answer this question, I do think it shows a little bit of weakness because everyone's kind of has a gun drawn to each other and everyone's waiting. And Anthem's not getting pushed out of there, and The Division can't be pushed out of there because they're kind of going up after each other. And Crackdown, who knows when that's going to come out. And these other games. So Days Gone, I think, was the weakest of the bunch, at least optically. But I'm excited about it, and I'm really confident that the game's going to be great. I really am confident in that. Like, I think the game is going to be great. To your point and to others' point, does anyone care is another thing entirely. I think Sony fans will obviously care, but Sony fans cared about Detroit, but you're never going to hear about that game pretty much ever again, you know?
Yeah. Well, what I mean is like it doesn't seem like it's going to be something like The Last of Us, where it's going to have this impact on like people, where even people who are like stuck on 360 back in the day were like, oh, that looks so good, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think anyone's really going to be longing for it if they can't play it or have access to it, but I'm hoping for the best. And I like my friends up there at Sony Bend. I'm wishing them the best. And there's so much riding on this game and this game's success that I do like that Sony at least gave them the best opportunity to succeed. Since the unfortunate reality of the situation, and I've said this in the past, and again, we're a candid podcast. We have candid conversations on this podcast. The reality is that this studio can't be a slam dunk to be making another game. I think everything relies on how this game performs, and they've taken so long to make it that if it doesn't hit and they're not going to make a sequel or they don't have something else going on, then unfortunately I think that they might fall by the wayside, just like so many other Sony studios have in the past. And I have equal concerns about Media Molecule. But again, hoping I'm wrong, hoping everyone succeeds and even expands and sells millions of copies. I'd love to be wrong. Number 2. In addition to Days Gone's delay, Sony also revealed the release timing of 2 smaller first-party titles that had been previously announced. Concrete Genie, a story-driven action game developed by Sony-incubated studio Pixel Opus, is aiming for launch in spring of 2019. Pixel Opus's only other game, Entwined, came to PS4, PS3, and Vita in June of 2014, and you may remember that it was revealed and launched during that year's E3 presentation. That was a very unusual thing. I remember that very much. Additionally, Sony clarified that Everybody's Golf VR, which is the Everybody's Golf series' first foray into VR, will launch on PSVR in that same spring of 2019 timeframe. So we'll see. Entwined wasn't very good.
No? I don't remember it.
It was this, I don't know, you guys can go look it up. I reviewed it back in the day, but it was this weird flight puzzle game. I don't know. It's a strange game, and they've been working on this Concrete Genie game for a while, so hopefully we're going to get something better out of them. But I'm excited and looking forward to playing it when the time comes. And Sony obviously focusing on many fewer, smaller indie games like the way they were in the past when I would get a code like every week from them. So they must believe in this game. Number 3, let's jump back into this Rockstar thing.
Oh boy.
More information has come out about the Rockstar 100-hour workweek fiasco. If you guys are lost on this, we discussed this in depth on last week's Sacred Symbols. For starters, Rockstar has reportedly allowed all of its employees to publicly talk about, tweet about, post about, etc. their working experiences at Rockstar studios across the world, and many devs have taken the opportunity to do so. The general gist of these tweets, which you can easily look up online, is that people work hard at Rockstar, but seemingly no one there is working 100 hours a week or anywhere close to it, nor have they been asked to work that much. Some devs note that they work totally normal hours always. Others note that those around them do. Some say they'll occasionally work 50 or maybe 60 hours a week, and it's more a point of pride for them, and they are never forced to do so. One dev in particular noted that she, and presumably many others, are compensated for overtime work. Hourly information provided to The Guardian notes that across Rockstar's global constellation of studios, the average working week during 2018 to date was between 42.4 and 45.8 hours, and that the busiest week was in early July, when the average peaked to 50.1 hours with a maximum reported hours of 67.1 hours, a far, far cry from 100 hours. So we're talking about an entire day plus difference in cumulative hours. Meanwhile, word has leaked out of Rockstar via Kotaku that QA has been reassured that their OT is completely optional and is and was never mandatory. While older stories of Rockstar's working conditions are more concerning, specifically surrounding Grand Theft Auto 4 and the original Red Dead Redemption, as well as the externally developed LA Noire, which apparently was a nightmare. It seems that the 100-hour work week fiasco was completely overblown, primarily by those with an ideological axe to grind.
Yeah, that's not surprising to me at all.
Yeah, what do you make of this whole situation before we get into the comments? Because this really started to bother me about, I'm sure that there are people that overwork there. I'm sure that there are people that are unhappy there. I'm sure there are people there that were asked to do shit and work extraordinary things. But
that's the case everywhere.
Exactly. There are something like 1,600 people working on this game.
That's insane.
So these people coming out publicly and saying, like, I've never worked that much. I've never even heard of that. Yeah. And everyone just ignores it. Like it's not a thing, you know?
Have people been just completely ignoring it?
Yeah, you'd think that there would be some sort of, I don't want to say retraction, but well, let's get into this question we got from Lockmore, because I think this gets into it, Chris, and we can go from there and structure our conversation. Lockmore wrote us a very lengthy message, but I'm going to read the whole thing.
Okay.
He says, "Hi, Colin and Chris. Now that the whole Red Dead 2 time crunch outrage appears to have been way overblown, shouldn't the media who falsely reported on it at least release a revising statement? Why is this not done anymore? I get that some of this information was only circulating on Twitter, but still, as soon as Dan Houser's interview with Vulture was published, certain people and outlets tripped over each other to misquote him and take his words out of context. When Houser released his new statement saying his words were twisted a bit, it was simply ignored by most, while others implied he wasn't telling the truth. When current Rockstar employees released statements saying they love working there and the crunch is perfectly doable, it was completely swept aside by most, while some used it to promote upcoming articles. It's well reported that Rockstar did in fact used to have a work ethics and time crunch problem. Plenty of former employees have corroborated the story and have since come forward. But listening to current employees, that doesn't seem to be the case anymore, except for some of the QA teams. Every normal job has crunch, and sometimes you just have to work extra hard or do overtime to get noticed. This isn't a new, isolated, or bad thing. It even turns out that Rockstar QA employees get paid overtime for their crunch, but somehow that doesn't seem to matter since it doesn't fit the narrative. Of course, Rockstar won't make an issue of it now since they're about to release their new game, but I wonder what this will do for their relationship with most of these journalists and their outlets. Why is it suddenly okay to report false information and not revise it when the truth comes out? Why is working hard and doing overtime suddenly considered evil? Haven't the people reporting or complaining about this ever worked a real job? Thank you both for being the best at what you do and for making Tuesdays and Fridays great again." It's quite the letter. And there's a lot to dissect in there.
Yeah.
What do you make of this situation, Chris? I'm curious what you make of kind of the way things have come out, the way things have gone. Do you agree with me that there's some sort of ideological bent to the reporting of this? Because to me, it seems like there's a far left contingent of games media types and those in its orbit. This is just me and my opinion. And again, I don't want to get political on the show. We've said that, but this is an inherently political issue, so we're going to get political about this. I think that there's a far left sect of politically leftist writers and ideological writers that want unionization, that want all of those kinds of things, and will do anything they can to push a narrative that seems to indicate that people are being tortured like they're slaves at these various studios. And I think that that's obvious. And while I'm not saying that the work conditions are perfect, and while I'm not saying that there aren't people that are unhappy there or have been overworked on Red Dead Redemption 2, what I'm saying is that this story was overblown completely because of the way it was covered by the media.
Yeah.
And there's no apology for it. There's no retraction for it. And I don't quite understand that environment.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. I think even beyond just the politics of it, I think it all really does come down to sensationalism. The fact that it came out recently that this was in fact overblown, and it's been corroborated numerous times that, hey, you know what, we aren't working 100-hour weeks. That's just not a sexy story. That's not going to get clicks. Like, oh, hey, no controversy happening at Rockstar is not an interesting headline. It's not going to get the clicks that these outlets need. I'm also deeply annoyed at the complete lack of care for including context, or including the context of the tenor of people, because earlier in this episode, I said Colin works 500-hour weeks. If you took that and just wrote it down, you would miss the context that was obviously delivered in jest, and it wasn't meant to be a genuine statement of fact. You can obviously tell by the absurdity of the time, but I feel like the original quote that started this whole thing probably was just hyperbole in the first place. Just a guy talking how he would normally talk, exaggerating things to make the story sound interesting. That's why this guy specifically hasn't been giving interviews for a long time. I doubt he'll be giving any more.
Yeah, his interviews are very rare.
Yeah. He's not somebody who's usually in front of an interviewer. He probably talks very candidly, very hyperbolic in front of the people that he's normally talking to. And it extended, and now we have a huge controversy based off of just normal hyperbole.
It's a problem, I think, because he wasn't given the benefit of the doubt. And he was basically being called a liar when he released this statement saying like, and then people that were coming out where, Rockstar was like, please talk candidly, which is apparently what they told their entire employee base. And then people were saying kind or nice or decent things about their working conditions and how long they've worked there. Some people work there 3 years. Some people work there 10 years, whatever the case might be, 15 years. Some of these people saying that they've never even heard of something like this. And people are like, well, of course they're not going to talk shit. And it's like, they've been put in a situation where they just simply cannot win. Anything that goes against the narrative.
It's a huge catch-22.
Exactly. And it's unfortunate because I think that it obscures real issues that are worth talking about. When everyone's focused on 100-hour work weeks, it's because you guys focused on 100-hour work weeks that are not happening.
I can't think of the last time I even heard of a 100-hour work week.
I'm sure there are people out there that pull 100 hours at game devs and all those kinds of things, and even at Rockstar. I'm not saying that when I'm like, because we don't know. There's going to be outliers, right? There's an outlier at Rockstar who works 10 hours a week and sleeps under his fucking desk. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, no, of course.
So, of course, there's going to be outliers on the other end, and I totally acknowledge and accept that, and I think that that's great that we talk about those things. But by being hyperbolic in our own coverage, and I'm saying our own in terms of the greater games media and greater game sphere, we kind of remove the gulf of saying like, well, some people are working 60 and 70 hours and they feel overworked and stuff. And I'm like, you know what? That's true and that's worth talking about. That's a 30 or 40 hour difference from your hyperbolic, headlines. I mean, a 40-hour difference in working conditions is a fucking work week. That's how different it is. And so people jumping on this bandwagon and making these guys seem evil with no corroborative evidence, and in fact plenty of evidence to the contrary, and a guy coming out and clarifying his statement, it just goes towards our societal norm these days in 2018 and beyond, probably, in which people are guilty regardless of what they say, regardless of who they are, regardless of what they do. If it doesn't fit your narrative, you'll twist it. If it does fit your narrative, you'll support it and burgeon it. And I think that's a huge problem. And it's not lost on me, Chris, that there is crunch. People do work hard. A lot of people work hard uncompensated. A lot of people are treated unfairly at game devs, and we should be talking about those issues. But this is bringing it to the nth degree. This is making it seem horrifying. And I just don't believe that Red Dead Redemption 2, I'm not talking about Grand Theft Auto 4, I'm not talking about Red Dead, I'm not talking about LA Noire, I'm saying Red Dead Redemption 2 was not developed under this level of duress at almost any level, except for maybe the lowest levels, which are always the most kind of abused, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And instead of having real conversations about that, we're focused on this now. We're focused on this hyperbole, but it's not my fault. And it's not your fault. It's the fucking people who covered its fault not looking into the nuance.
So are they using this recent controversy to kind of, maybe it's not true this time, but hey, back in the day, is it kind of that situation?
It is that kind of situation. And there was a lot back in the day, I mean, to be perfectly fair, about the working conditions at Rockstar.
But if it's not emblematic of the company now, then what does it matter? Like, what have you done?
Well, that also goes to the point of you can't change. That's the other thing. It's you're not allowed to change.
This is like when people demand people apologize for like things they tweeted when they were like 16 or something. It's like, what are you doing? Calm down.
It's very strange, Yeah, did Rockstar used to be a more hellish place to work? I would imagine. Grand Theft Auto 3 came out in the fall of 2001. Grand Theft Auto Vice City and San Andreas came out in 2003 and 2004. Do you think that those were developed under normal circumstances?
No.
I don't think so, guys.
No way.
Like, there's no doubt that it was heinous back in the day. But I'll also say this. There's a few things that I want to fill in here. Number one, I went on Glassdoor, which is a website where people kind of anonymously rate their employers. Annual bonuses at Rockstar can go into the 6 figures per employee. That's number one.
Holy hell.
Okay? Number two, there are tweets from Rockstar employees indicating that at least some of them, if not all of them, are compensated for overtime, which is not unusual at other developers. And here's the big one, number three. And I've had some arguments with people about this in the past. I truly do not believe, and people can take umbrage with this if they want, I truly do not believe that the creative fields are 9 to 5 clock punching jobs. Yeah. And if you want to work a 40-hour clean, precise week, game development is probably not for you. I'm not saying that people don't do it or can't do it. I'm saying that it's probably not for you. And I don't begrudge the person who wants to work 50 or 60 or 70 hours a week on this masterpiece game that they're making, in which they will be forever judged on their input, their little slice of this game. They can use this slice of this game to get another job, to get more money, all those kinds of things. If a person who made Red Dead Redemption 2, who was an environment artist, takes his work and is like, yeah, I poured some 60 or 70 hours a week into this thing, and I'm going to bring this to Naughty Dog, and I'm going to show them what I can do. This is what I did in this game. And they're like, that's impressive. come work for us. Here's a $25,000 raise. You know, who are we to begrudge people working at their own cadence and speaking about all of them as if they're the same, as if all of these workers are overworked, as if they're all miserable, as if they all want out at 5 and they all want to get in there at 9. It's nonsense. I've worked in creative fields professionally for my entire adult life, and it's not the way it functions. I'm not saying that there's not abuse happening. I'm not saying people aren't underpaid. I'm saying that like it's kind of the norm. And I hate to tell you that it's probably pretty rare to have a massive success or be a massive success having perfect parameters in life and work and not putting in those hours and not putting in that time. And I'm not saying you have to be that person, but it comes at a cost. And I feel like that's lost on people. It comes at a cost, you know?
No, yeah, I agree pretty much entirely.
That's what bothers me so much about it, Chris, is like it's demeaning to people on one hand to say like you have to work this hard, you have to go uncompensated, you do this or you're fired. That's horrible. On the other hand, it's to say like, if you're working more than 40 hours a week, you have no balance, you have no life, you should want to do something else, you should want something else for yourself and your family and all that kind of stuff. And some people are sitting there, certainly a lot of people at Rockstar that worked at Red Dead around the world are sitting there and being like, you're about to see what we made. And we worked really hard on it. And it was not possible to make in 40-hour work weeks.
Even just in the games industry, if you have like those perfect parameters, like those 9 to 5s, you're going to end up with like the 360 remake of Bionic Commando or like just stuff that's not masterpiece tier. I think that's ultimately what you get when you put in just the basic bare necessity. You know what I mean?
It's almost like a pitting each other, or people look at it as pitting each other against themselves, where it's like everyone's out working each other and everyone's out hustling each other. And I'm like, hey guys, that's kind of capitalism. And, you know, the cream rises to the top. And people that work hard and care are compensated for it typically. And I find true meaning and pleasure and joy in my work. And without that, I'm kind of lost. And I can respect and identify with that. And that's, I think, what bothers me the most is there's a lot of silent devs out there who resent this kind of talk.
Do you find yourself ever missing, like kind of having like some kind of affinity for that? Like being able to just like kind of punch out and like completely shut off?
Yeah, and I respect that people want to work like that and other things matter to people, but there are creative folks in society and people that are passionate in society and all of these great businesses that we live off of and all of these great things that we use. You think Elon Musk is putting 40 hours of work a weekend? Do you think Tim Cook at Apple is putting 40 hours in? Or do you think Steve Jobs and Wozniak were putting 40 hours in when they made the Apple II? Do you think when the fucking Apollo missions went to the moon that they were putting 40-hour weeks in? I don't understand what people are thinking when great, extraordinary things, no matter where they come from, whether it's a video game, whether it's a refrigerator, whether it's a TV, whatever the case might be, whether it's a flight to space, you can't do those things in 40-hour work weeks. You just can't.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. And by the way, you're not putting a gun to anyone's head. I bet you if you go to mission control for the Apollo missions, no one had a gun to their head to work those 80, 90, 100-hour grueling missions where every decimal had to be in the right place, where every piece of math had to be perfect, where people's lives were on the line and they were going to die hundreds of thousands of miles from the planet. And they still did it. And to me, I'm like, I respect that. I respect it. And so, yeah, is there something that I miss about that normalcy? Sure. And I think that a lot of people embrace that normalcy, and that's great.
I think there's a lot of people who can't imagine not having that. And so it's kind of difficult to like kind of put themselves in a headspace where they're like spending 60 hours working on something.
Right, exactly. And you know, the other thing, Chris, that I think is interesting is if you want to unionize game development and all that kind of stuff, I'm not going to stand in your way. I have no problem with private unions at all.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it should be in terms of compensation, in terms of back-end bonuses and all that kind of stuff, which I think a lot of game developers are ripped off on and are basically abused over. So these publishers make multi-billion-dollar profits on a lot of these games or a lot of their offerings for an entire year, and I think that's wrong too. But focusing on hours worked, I think, is the wrong thing because passionate people that I've worked with my entire life don't put 40-hour work weeks in. You know, IGN didn't have that. No one asked us to do it, but we didn't. When we founded and ran Kind of Funny, no one was working 40 hours a week. I certainly work a far fucking cry from 40 hours a week now. You do too. And that's just the kind of the way it goes. And so I kind of feel like hard work is actually one of the things, and passion is another one of the things that's under attack here. And there's a lot of subtext to it. And I'm not ashamed of working hard, and I'm not ashamed of sacrificing. And if other people are, that's totally cool. But I think there's a lot of conflation going on with this conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Jay Drysdale wrote into us and said, a comment on the crunch time headline issue. While the media has taken this out of context, I find it hard to believe that if the writing team is crunching huge hours to make revisions and tweaks that wouldn't have a direct and possibly exponential time impact on the team members in the design and engineering wing. I work in the oil and gas industry where shutdowns and project deadlines are incredibly important. However, it's been my personal experience that the severity of a crunch is a direct relation to how management use their assets throughout the life of the project. I think industry-wide companies need to reassess their internal completion models, so unionization is not the only option left for team members. This is interesting because I thought about this as well, Chris, which is the idea that if these guys, let's take Hauser at his word that they worked 100-hour weeks several times throughout the year. And then that then trickles down to a team in which that all of that work is added on to their plates or whatever. But I actually think it's the exact opposite. I think that they probably had to pull those 100-hour weeks. Let's assume, again, they were not being hyperbolic. They pulled those to make sure everything was in line so that it would trickle down this pyramid-shaped structure to everyone that needed all the finalized information.
Yeah.
Again, noting that there's something like 15 or 1,600 people working on the game.
Yeah.
Or have worked on the game. So I don't think that there's a correlation there. But I do think that with crunch, and this idea of crunch is often blamed on production and producers and bad production and bad timelines. And that's often the case. But in my own conversations with game devs and in just my own, using your own knowledge and your own mind of how things work, that's not the case. As you get closer to the end of something, you see all of the things that need to be fixed that can't be fit into the production pipeline, and things just exponentially get crazier. Like when a book's about to be published, they're reading and rereading and rereading and rereading the print.
I saw that.
Nothing is, yeah, exactly, because your girlfriend just published a book.
Yeah.
Nothing is going to stop. No amount of production timeline is going to stop them from rereading and rereading and rereading that print to make sure there's no errors in it. It's an arc on the graph that goes up no matter what, because you're getting to the end and you have to shit or get off the pot. So even if you have a fine timeline and the production is 40 hours a week for that entire time, people, passionate, caring people are still going to dump in extra hours to make sure it's done right, because you can't fix it after that, you know? Or at least you're in games, you can fix it with a patch or whatever. So I take umbrage with the idea that their 100-hour work weeks were trickling down.
Especially because it's the narrative team.
Right.
Like, I don't see how that would directly impact the majority of the people working on just graphics interfaces or UI or really anything. The physics engine, like, I don't see how a narrative, any work put into the narrative team would translate to more work for somebody working on a physics model or making sure hitboxes are working correctly or anything like that. That seems odd.
I think that they probably just had to get the script in order. They said, like, this is the finalized script, and now we have to get it localized and translated this way. Now we have to fit it into the game, fit it into the boxes, do pickups with our VO actors, all those kinds of things. So yeah, it creates work, but it's just the necessary part of making a game that big. You know, I just don't understand where people think these games come from.
You think we've had enough bad games, you know? Like we've experienced enough like horrendous broken projects that we would be like, okay, well, maybe we don't want to have this again.
I think that multiple things at the same time can be true. It's always the case, and people lose sight of it, Chris, is that, and I'll say it again, people are undoubtedly overworked and underpaid and underappreciated. No doubt about it.
100%.
But these are video games made by artists and creators and passionate people that are going to dump the hours in, and we are losing sight that it requires that level of hard work to make something like they're making.
I think they're looking in the wrong place.
I think so too. I think so too. I really do. I think that Rockstar, according to all things that I've heard and read, and people that I know that have tweeted out about their experiences working there 10 years ago, was a different spot.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the good thing, is that you're allowed to grow as a studio and fix a lot of the problems that you've run into in the past and streamline that process so it's not quite as horrendous. And they're very clearly a different studio now than they were 10 years ago. As is any studio, as is any person, as is anything. Is anything really the same as it was 10 years ago? Can you think of anything?
No.
Yeah.
No.
There you go.
Literally nothing. Literally nothing's the same.
Case closed. Go home.
And again, I'm just concerned about this narrative coming from people that are supposed to be, you know, kind of purveyors of taste and purveyors of the commonalities that we talk about in our industry. And they clearly are moving towards and are trying to prop up their own ideological viewpoints, which they always do. And I'm just going to call it the way I see it. The reason there was a problem with The Witcher 3 was ideological reasons. The reason that there was a problem with Kingdom Come Deliverance was ideological reasons.
Oh, yeah.
It never stops. And you guys deserve better. You deserve better publications. And you're certainly not going to get political smoke blown up your ass on this show. I can fucking guarantee you that. You know. And by the way, I'm sitting across from a liberal. I'm conservative, but Chris is liberal. We bring a balance to this, but let's call a spade a spade. and call it like it is.
The Witcher one in particular was so egregiously obvious.
Dude, I can't even get started on those controversies anymore because they're just so transparent, and it's a wonder that anyone reads some of these websites straight up. You know, like, I don't understand who the hell any of these people even are writing towards and who's reading this and soaking it up. Yeah, there's a racism problem in Kingdom Come Deliverance, the game that takes place in 6 square miles of 13th century Bohemia and has no black people in it. Okay, I guess. You know, I guess that's a problem.
So, like, I don't know. I can't help but laugh about it because it's just so absurd. And I honestly, like, most of the comments that I see on those tweets or articles, they bring me some kind of solace.
Yeah,
because most of them is just like, what is this?
It's catharsis.
Yeah, it's good.
Christian Williams says, "Hey guys, great show. Glad you're back talking about PlayStation, Colin. Thank you so much, Christian. All the talk of crunch and unions of the game industry, I was wondering if unions came to be, would it make game companies move to countries or cities that don't have union workers?" I don't want to get too deep into this because I actually want to try to get someone on to either this show or on the Fireside Chats to talk about unionization in games.
Yeah, I'm definitely no expert on this at all.
The problem with unionization in games from a very baseline level, and this is just
a global market.
Exactly. Teams worked on Red Dead Redemption in the UK, in the United States, in other parts of Europe, in India, in China. How the fuck are you going to unionize them?
Yeah.
How? And if you're a publisher, let's say you are an indie. Well, EA is a great example. They published those Unravel games, which were made, I think, in Sweden. So Electronic Arts is an American incorporated business in California with a Swedish workforce. You're going to unionize them. I don't understand. And then how does that interaction work? I'm not saying that these things are impossible. I'm saying that it is way harder than simply voting to unionize or voting not to unionize. And I will say one other thing about this. Game prices will go up if they're unionized. Games will take way longer to develop if the staffs are unionized. I bet you game quality goes down if they're unionized. And above all else, I think that it's going to send studios and publishers straight out of business. I think studios and publishers straight are just not going to want to deal with that, which is not uncommon. A lot of others, you know, didn't they shut down? This is a random example, but didn't Wonder Bread shut down like 5 or 6 years ago? They were bought by someone else, but they shut down everything because their workforce voted to unionize, and they're like, we're done.
Wonder Bread?
Yeah.
Wonder Bread.
Wonder Bread. Like whatever company owned Wonder and Twinkies and all that kind of stuff. Right. Hostess, I guess it was. I think that like 5 years ago or so, they voted to unionize and they just shut the company down. They're just like, nope. And then someone else came in and bought it. Now, I'm not saying that that's the right or wrong answer, but what I am saying is that anyone who's coming to you with a bill of sale saying like, let's unionize, here are the proper things, and here's the channels we go through, and here's the result, are lying to you because it's not going to be easy. It's going to be this incredibly complicated, incredibly raw thing. And I'll say
there are industries where I think unionization makes perfect sense, and workers do need a lot of protection from people who would prey on their workforces, but the gaming industry is so convoluted sometimes. It's almost as messy as the nature of making games themselves, honestly. It's a huge mess.
And I will
say, it's a miracle anything gets done.
No, it is. It's a big moving process when you have hundreds of people and sometimes 1,000 or more people making a game and all putting all these little disparate elements into this thing that works. It's very unusual.
Yeah, into code, which, by the way, is incredibly fragile. Code is like, you erase, like, what was it? Colonial Marines?
Oh yeah, where they
misspelled something,
and the AI was broken.
They fixed a spelling error in code, and it fixed like the entire AI.
For people that don't know what Chris is talking about, one of the major hitches with Alien Colonial Marines, which I think came out in 2012 or 2013, was that the AI was terrible. And not until this year, rather, did someone realize that something was misspelled in the code that made the AI act weird, and no one, even at the company that made it, figured that out. And the game could have had a totally different trajectory if that spelling error wasn't in there. So yeah. Difficult things, complicated issues, and that's the point I'm trying to make. No matter what side you fall on this, if you believe in unionization, if you don't, I personally have no problem with them pursuing it. I just think that it's way more complicated, and there's not a one-size-fits-all solution to these problems. You know, Motion Twin, the guys that made Dead Cells, is a French studio, totally socialistically run. Everyone owns an equal share of it, and they split the profits equally. That's their solution. That kind of thing's not going to work at other developers and other publishers, and wouldn't work anywhere I worked or anything I owned at, or owned, by the way. That wouldn't possibly be a thing at anything that I worked at. But, you know, to each his own. Ethan Sexton wrote in and said, which do y'all prefer in an open world RPG? A protagonist that you create, like in Bethesda games, or a protagonist that you just play as, like in Red Dead Redemption 2? What do you prefer?
I don't think I have a preference. I think it depends on the quality. Like, I very much enjoyed Red Dead Redemption, even though it was an RPG that was based on kind of like a character kind of thing. Because Fallout 4 was one where I was like, you know, you're playing your own character, and you design him and you play him however you want, but he's also got a distinct voice and a distinct backstory. I didn't like that. I don't like it when they mesh those two. You know what I mean? When it's like this kind of predetermined character that you kind of loosely get to. The only time I've ever seen that done well is like Mass Effect. And even then, it was kind of like, it was pretty loose.
Yeah, and primitive, too. I think they're getting a little more complicated with it. I personally like characters that developers put me in the role of. I don't want to play as me. And now it's fine if there's an avatar out there and I have to play as that avatar, as many games are, but that's not my preference. I want you to tell me your story with your characters, and I have no problem playing as your character. I don't need to dress myself up and pretend that I'm in fucking Fallout. You know, my rocks don't get off on that, Chris.
Yeah, it really does depend on the quality of the project. I rather enjoyed Skyrim, even though that was very much like you were pretty much yourself in that game. You were the Dragonborn, but like that was really the only predetermined thing about you. It wasn't like Fallout where you had, I have a son. I care so deeply for my son, who I've never seen.
I know.
It's like, what?
I replayed Fallout 4 just the first 10 hours or so recently, and I forgot that that's how it started. I'm like, this is kind of
like, I don't care about my son.
I'd rather you just drop me on the wasteland without any of this and just no context at all.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Just kind of go about my business.
It would almost make way more sense. Not to say I actually did like Fallout 4, though.
You would. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Number 4.
It's just a good insult.
It is. It's the best insult. It's the totally best
I'm
insult.
hungry. You would.
You would be. Number 4. News on the Medieval Remaster for PlayStation 4 is imminent.
Oh, good.
Word comes by way of the official PlayStation blogcast as relayed by website Push Square, which noted that podcast host Sid Schumann said the following, quote, I have it on excellent authority that one Sean Layden is going to be stopping back on the show in the next week or two. He's very excited to give everybody a big update on Medieval, end quote. Back in the PS1 days, Medieval was a beloved franchise to many. The first game, just called Medieval, came out in 1998 and was followed up by a sequel in 2000. We last saw Medieval on PSP when Medieval Resurrected arrived as a PSP launch game in 2005. At PSX in 2017, Medieval Remastered was revealed, but we've seen pretty much nothing about it since, other than that it's coming to PlayStation 4. It sounds like we won't have to wait much longer, and you must be very excited about it.
I'm very happy about this. I loved Medieval. I'm kind of sad that it's only well, maybe it's not, but it seems like it's only the first game, which is a little lame because I thought the second one was really, really good. But I'll take it. I'll take whatever I can get. I love Sir Daniel Fortescue. Classic character.
He was a good character. He was especially classic in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale.
We don't talk about that.
Oh, fair enough.
We don't talk about that one.
Number 5. Jade Raymond has officially left Electronic Arts, though it's unclear why or under what circumstances. Raymond was the original producer of Assassin's Creed, rising to the role of executive producer for not only Assassin's Creed 2, but Watch Dogs and Splinter Cell Blacklist as well. She left Ubisoft in 2014 to join EA, helping to create a new EA-owned Canadian studio called Motive, which came into existence in 2015. Motive has yet to release a game of its own, though it did work on the ill-conceived Star Wars Battlefront 2 and continues to work on some sort of yet unknown Star Wars title. Website VentureBeat reports that Samantha Ryan, who is in charge of EA's Maxis and BioWare studios, as well as EA's overall mobile initiative, will now be helming the studio. Raymond's next move is yet unknown. So we'll see what that's all about.
Yeah.
I wonder if she left under her own, or on her own, or under duress. We'll see what happens, because they have not done shit in the 3+ years that they've been a team. So
What, Motive?
yeah.
Yeah.
God bless them.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're working hard up there. And they also absorbed EA Montreal, or BioWare Montreal, I should say, which is the team that made Mass Effect Andromeda. So lots of people and lots of things and lots of structures there to deal with. But, you know, Jade Raymond left Ubisoft in 2014 and then really has yet to put a name on her game since then. And I wonder where she's going to move on to next. I often wonder about this whole Flux thing and the producers and everything going on behind the scenes. Very interesting. So
Yeah. I wish we had more info.
we probably will very soon, maybe by the time this podcast goes live, although we want to wish Jade Raymond the very best nonetheless.
Yeah.
I don't want to say one of the very first. That's not true, but during this movement of women in games and kind of proliferating women's role in games and, you know, their place in the industry and all that kind of stuff, she was at the forefront of that kind of movement of highlighting female talent that is usually gone undersung or kind of under the radar. And so she plays a prominent role in that, which I think is pretty cool. Number 6. Eurogamer has relayed word of a controversy erupting in the Call of Duty community, specifically when it comes to the newly released commercial smash hit, Black Ops 4. It appears that Treyarch, the Activision-owned team responsible for this year's Call of Duty, has the PS4, quote, running at a third of the server send rate value that has been available in the beta test, end quote, lowering it from 60 hertz to 20 hertz. That's how you say that, right? HD?
Yeah. No, you said it right.
What this essentially means is that Black Ops 4's servers are pinging the game for up to the millisecond data a third as much as they were during the beta. This is obviously a huge deal in a fast-paced game like Black Ops 4, which relies on pinpoint accuracy when it comes to hits, kills, and more. Treyarch responded, according to Eurogamer, noting that the team is, quote, constantly working to optimize the game, and particularly network performance, to ensure the highest quality online experience for our players. For a game launch with a massive population as ours hitting so many global servers at once, we configure our infrastructure to ensure stability as the highest priority over all other factors. Now that we're past the initial launch of the game, we are focusing on fine-tuning network performance around the globe using the real-world data that we have collected. End quote. Chris?
My God. This is one of the most annoying things that I've noticed in the game. You haven't played it, obviously.
No.
But it's one of those games where, and I haven't experienced this in a while, where you'll be behind a wall. Hey, I'm going to take cover. I'm going to walk behind this wall. And you're fully behind a wall. You can't see beyond it. And you still get killed from the other side because the server still thinks you're not behind the wall yet. Which in a game where you can die in 0.6 seconds is infuriating beyond compare. It's the fact that you can die quicker than the server can refresh itself is insane. It's super frustrating.
Well, this must have been, and why I included it here is this must be what you were talking about.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about. It's just frustrating. It feels like the game is like rubber banding constantly, and it's like, oh hey, I got killed in the past. Like, what's going on? It's insane. And
creating
the game,
grandfather
the game
paradoxes.
is the fact that a game that relies on speed like this, right? The fact that you can die so quick, the fact that it takes longer to raise your gun up to aim and shoot than it does to die, coupled with the fact that it's not even refreshing fast enough to register any of it, is insane. It's insane in a competitive environment. In like the zombies player versus environment mode, that's fine. You know, in custom games, it's whatever, because it's just a friendly, you know, whatever mode. But in a competitive setting, where you're just kind of trying to win and you feel constantly cheated out of every minor victory that you can somehow scratch off this game, it's just completely unsatisfactory. And it's astounding to me that it's even a problem.
I don't know anything about technology. I don't know if you've noticed that about me yet.
Right.
Is it possible for them to have the best of both worlds? Because it seems like what they were saying was that we have to basically emphasize X at the sake of Y. And so they've emphasized stability, your ability to get into a game, for that game to be stable, as opposed to, you know, checking the game,
right,
you know, for updates constantly. A third as much is actually the way it was put to me. So could they have it both ways? It seems like they're trying to integrate it to both ways.
Well, the beta worked fine, apparently. I didn't play the beta, so I don't know. But I've seen footage of, like, yeah, that's very clearly, like, a way quicker refresh rate. People aren't dying behind walls. And I've played numerous multiplayer games since the original Call of Duty came out to now, to even recently, where that's not been a problem for years. I haven't experienced that since probably the last time I played Call of Duty. And the fact that it's still an issue is astounding to me, especially when it wasn't an issue in the beta. I just don't understand it.
I wonder if it's a problem in Fortnite.
I don't know.
I was just trying to say that to annoy you, but it didn't work.
No, I've heard it too much. I took Lacey out for her birthday to this restaurant, AOC, in like West Hollywood or whatever. And there was this kid. I went through a whole day not hearing about Fortnite, not seeing it. I was like, oh man, this is great. One for the history books. I'm excited. And then this kid walks out doing that floss dance. And I was like,
I'm not familiar with the dance.
I'm glad, actually. Consider yourself a blessed soul.
I do. Every day. Every day. Number 7. Downloading games to PlayStation 4 is responsible for a staggering 2.7% of all global internet traffic. In comparison, Netflix accounts for 15% of traffic, while YouTube accounts for 11.4%. Word comes by way of a report from Sandvine, relayed by Push Square, which shows not only the reach of PS4, but how much digital gaming has taken off. Again, this isn't data coming from PS4, but actual game downloads.
That's a lot.
It's incredible.
I'm actually shocked that YouTube is only 11.
Me too, but you know what? I'm getting increasingly frustrated with YouTube, and I wonder if other people are as well, where it's going to start affecting them. Like, I kind of feel trapped on that platform with SideQuest, my video game show, where if we put out an episode of Sacred Symbols, I know that it's going to find you. Like, it's going to go through the RSS feeds. iTunes will tell you it's there, or whatever you use. Like, predictably, they have no algorithm. It's just like you sign up and it tells you when the podcast comes.
Yeah.
And so I know I'm going to be able to find you, and it's up to you whether or not you want to listen to it. But with YouTube, I just damn well know that they're not showing a ton of people my videos, and it makes me not want to make them anymore.
No, yeah.
It really doesn't.
No,
like,
yeah, I have the same thing, where it's like the last video I put out like went out to maybe like half the audience. And I got a ton of messages like, oh, I didn't know. I had to check your channel to see if you had uploaded. And it's like, what are you doing? What is this?
It's frustrating.
There's even a bell to make sure that they're notified, and it doesn't even work.
It's just weird. Like, don't you think that they would come out and say, like, and especially with a company with the reach and breadth of Google that owns YouTube, would come out and say, like, we don't know what's going on here. We're going to restructure this. Everyone who's subscribed to anything is just going to get the videos. And if you click the bell, we'll give you an extra little notification. And otherwise, so just totally predictable. No, instead, someone subscribes to my channel and they just are straight up not told about what I'm doing. It's
they
just
can't
weird.
Figure it out because they're too busy removing pepperoni from pizza graphics on inclusivity training slideshows. Did you see that?
Yes. Yes. That was for vegans, right?
It was for vegans. They took it. They had like this clip art of a pizza with pepperoni, and they took the pepperoni off to be more inclusive.
I'm just going to
reiterate. That's a priority. Not making sure that their platforms work.
They got to make sure that everything's, good for vegans.
Remember when Google Plus was a thing?
Yes. The social network.
Did really well. I heard great things about it.
Very weird. It's weird where they fail. Like YouTube Gaming was another thing. I remember when YouTube Gaming was announced, and I'm like, oh man, Twitch is done. I couldn't be further from the truth on that one. They just don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, YouTube Gaming is just... Is it even anything? It's just...
No, they closed it. It's gone now.
Is it gone?
Yeah, totally gone.
I thought it was still there, just like not... Huh.
No, I think a few weeks ago, they like basically folded the vertical back into
that's
YouTube itself. I think so.
I guess it's kind of redundant anyway, because you could just go into the gaming section of... Like, as a YouTuber... As somebody who does work primarily on YouTube, it's just good to have your hands in a different basket. Like it would suck if YouTube that it would be more incentivized to stream on YouTube, because that would just mean all of your eggs are in YouTube's basket.
Exactly.
Which would suck if you got a channel strike, now you can't even stream video games. It's like, what?
They're the worst.
Yeah. I buy licenses to music sometimes, and I use it and I still get struck. And it's insane. And there's the appeal, there's no way for you to send proof that you have the license. So it's like, what's the point?
I'm telling you right now that like I regret all the time. No, I don't want to put it in those, I guess, dire terms, but I really regret having a video show and having it on YouTube. And I wish sometimes that CLS was just podcasts, because at least I can have the confidence that I'm failing or succeeding based entirely on me and my content, and not based on their fucking schmuckery.
Yeah.
I'm so sick of YouTube.
That's the frustrating thing, is not knowing whether or not it's your fault or not.
Like, I'm telling you,
what did I do wrong? Is
exactly.
is it me because I didn't do the metadata right, or is it their fault because it doesn't work? Like, you never know. It's so frustrating.
There are videos that I am positive should have done better traffic than they did. I did a huge video on Star Wars video games, which I thought would have been huge. It did like 16,000 views, which is fine, but I'm like, I'm pretty sure people didn't see. I just don't believe that people saw this.
Yeah.
And it sucks because you just don't know. You don't know, and they just lie to you.
That's the worst thing about it, honestly. I would be fine failing.
Exactly.
I would be fine getting 6 views on a video, as long as I knew that was because of something I did.
It's exactly
and
right.
not because some idiot didn't flick a switch.
Very frustrating. Very frustrating. Number 8, to make fun of so-called Puddlegate, the pre-launch controversy surrounding PS4 exclusive Spider-Man that had to do with comparable screens that showed less detail in the final version, including a lack of watery puddles. Insomniac has added stickers to its in-game photo mode that allows you to place clearly fake puddles in any picture you'd like. The update is available now and is free of charge to all players. I love that.
I love this so much. I love the snark in it. It's
awesome.
So inherently snarky.
Oh my God, it's all it is.
I love it. I love it.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Number 9, it appears that Rocket League is ready to jump into the truly cross-play world, though PS4 players playing against, say, Xbox One players will have to wait until 2019. Rocket League's developer, Psyonix, has long been an advocate of cross-play and cross-progression, and it's wrapping that all into something it's calling Rocket ID, which unifies usernames, friend lists, statistics, and more across platforms. While that was supposed to roll out by the end of 2018, Psyonix has pushed it into 2019, noting in a blog post that the delay could be positive. Quote, "The good news is that with Sony's recent announcement regarding full cross-platform functionality, we can now make additional changes to prepare Rocket ID for all platforms should we receive the permission to do so," end quote. You may recall that Rocket League was a pioneer of console crossplay. When it launched in 2015 on PS4, it allowed you to play with PC gamers, which was generally, though not totally, unheard of at the time.
Yeah. The first game that I could think of that did that was Shadowrun. Back in 05 or
and
06.
I think Final Fantasy 11 and 14 might do that as well. Something like that.
I think so, yeah.
Number 10 is a wrap-up, Chris. This is the rest of the news.
Oh, boy.
Strange dating simulator Dream Daddy Dad Rector's Cut is coming to PlayStation 4 on October 30th.
Is that the Game Grumps game?
I think so. Yeah.
That's a good name. I like that.
Deep action RPG Thronebreaker The Witcher Tales is coming to PlayStation 4 on December 4th. long in development Shakedown Hawaii, which looks awesome, and it's the spiritual successor to V-Blank Entertainment's Retro City Rampage, which came to PS3 and Vita way back in 2012. It's set to launch in early 2019 on both PlayStation 4 and Vita. And finally, popular free-to-play RPG Path of Exile looks like it's coming to PlayStation 4, as it's been rated by the Taiwanese Digital Games Rating Committee for release on the console, according to Gamatsu. Path of Exile initially came to PC in 2013 and Xbox One in 2017.
Damn, that's wow.
Chris, shall we get into the new game releases?
Yes, let us do that.
Yeah, go ahead and why don't you lead us off?
All right. Bugs Box VR comes to PSVR. It's a Wednesday release. The bugs invade Honeyland. It's up to you to keep peace by moving your character and pushing blocks around to defeat the enemy bugs. Now a casual VR game with simple controls for everyone to play.
All right. Castlevania Requiem comes to PlayStation 4. It's a Friday release. Experience 2 of the greatest games from the famous Castlevania series. Get to the top of Dracula's castle as the descendant of the famed clan of vampire hunters in Rondo of Blood, or play as Dracula's son Alucard in Symphony of the Night. Can't wait!
I'm excited about it. You know what I recently watched the Castlevania thing on Netflix.
Oh yeah, the series is supposed to be excellent.
I had no idea it was that good. I saw the first season. It was like 4 episodes, and it was I'm excited. I'm excited for this and the second season, which is out pretty soon.
Castlevania fucking rules. Do right, Konami. Do it!
Chicken Range comes to PS4 and Vita as a Friday release. Fun and quirky shoot-'em-up game. Shoot the chickens using an array of different weaponry. Chicken types include riot police chickens, tank chickens, ninja chickens, helicopter chickens, and many more. I almost said pigeons for a second. I don't know why I'm thinking of pigeons.
Well, I'm curious, is the chicken a helicopter or is the chicken a helicopter pilot?
It's to be determined.
Because it's saying, like, all right, riot police is a person. A tank, though, is a device. And then the ninja is a person and the helicopter is a device. So I'm curious what the nature of the chickens driving the tanks, driving the helicopters, or are they becoming tanks and becoming helicopters? This will determine whether I play the game or not. Grid Retro Enhanced comes to PS4. Grid Retro Enhanced is an intense arcade-style cyberpunk hacking shoot-'em-up with an incredible soundtrack, procedurally generated elements, and electric visuals.
Halloween Forever comes to PS4 and Vita. Something mysterious is happening in the pumpkin patch this Halloween. You control Pumpkin Man, a humanoid pumpkin thing animated by occult forces on a quest to discover why things are so creepy. And you vomit candy corn.
I want to play that. I'm going to buy that.
I love this. I love that it's described as a humanoid pumpkin thing. Like, even they're not sure what it is.
By the way, I started playing this game on Vita just a little bit in bed one night. I don't remember what it was. Like, it's not important. It was some shitty, like, shmup, like, shooter. And the trophies were coming so quickly that I'm so embarrassed to have them that I'm formatting my Vita so that I don't get them added to my trophy list. Just wanted to throw that out there. Just Dance 2019 comes to PS4 and retail. Just Dance 2019 is the ultimate dance game with 40 hot tracks from chart-topping hits to family favorites. Your Just Dance experience is now personalized as the game learns your dancing habits and suggests content. I was a little surprised to see that this isn't, or they're not promoting the PS3 version. I would assume it was also coming to PS3. I think as of last year, it was still coming to Wii, the original Wii.
Wow, really?
True
Jesus.
Yeah.
I guess it is more motion-oriented, so I guess it'd probably be pretty easy.
I think that the last year that Sony San Diego made MLB The Show for PlayStation 2 was 2014, something like that.
Wow.
They were still, I think, selling 250,000 copies a year on PS2.
That's insane.
Yeah.
How does that game look? I wonder if it looks good.
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, they stopped, but I mean, they stopped the Vita iteration quickly too, but I thought that was funny that they were still selling hundreds of thousands of copies on PS2, 12, 13 years after it came out.
Yeah, deeply unsettling. Mind Labyrinth VR Dreams comes to PSVR. Mind Labyrinth VR Dreams lets you explore different kinds of imaginary environments and discover amazing new emotions in wonderful virtual dreams.
I don't know if I want new emotions. I already have enough emotions.
There's already too many of those.
My Hero One's Justice comes to PS4. It's coming to retail, and it's a Friday release. Fight for your justice in My Hero One's Justice. The popular manga and anime series clashes head-to-head and quirk to quirk in this 3D arena fighter. Choose between hero or villain and battle through iconic moments.
Never Out comes to PSVR. Never Out is a mysterious puzzle game. It puts you in a small, claustrophobic room that has only one way out, and its unique mechanics allow every wall to become the floor. Will you survive or ever get out?
presumably not. It's called Never Out, so I assume not.
I guess not. Yeah, spoilers.
Nickelodeon Kart Racer comes to PS4 at retail. Hit the slime-filled racetracks with Nickelodeon Kart Racers. Select a racer from one of your favorite Nickelodeon shows and race your friends in up to 4-player local multiplayer, or check out the Battle Arena for a variety of challenges.
Paw Patrol on a Roll comes to PS4 in retail. Paw Patrol is on a roll. No job is too big, no pup is too small. Join Ryder and all 8 Paw Patrol pups for 16 missions in 8 Possum Adventure Bay locations. Help the pups use their unique abilities to rescue friends and save the day.
Perils of Baking Refrosted comes to Vita. Perils of Baking is a 2D platformer love letter to its retro inspirations. You play as the younger of 2 brothers, famous for their baking. It's up to you to stop your brother's evil plans as he has given in to a dark artifact. I will say real quick, I played and platinumed this game on PS4 when it came out. It's cross-buy. I think you get it on Vita for free if you own it on PS4. Made by a friend of this show.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Red Dead Redemption 2 comes to PS4 at retail. It's a Friday release. Red Dead Redemption 2 is an epic tale of life in America's unforgiving heartland. The game's vast and atmospheric world will also provide the foundation for a brand new online multiplayer experience.
More on that soon.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Sky Hill comes to PS4. It's a Wednesday release. World War III was one cruel tragedy, at least for the others. You seem to have quite a nice time hidden in your fancy penthouse at the Sky Hill Hotel until the impact of a bioweapon blew away the life you once knew. Huh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah. Word Sudoku by Paugi comes to PS4 and Vita. It's Sudoku with words! It's got an exclamation point there. Place letters in the grid according to normal Sudoku rules, and one row or column will spell the word. Includes 240 unique and beautifully symmetrical word Sudoku puzzles, graded for difficulty from beginner to expert. I forgot about Sudoku.
I used to be obsessed with it in college.
Really?
So I don't know if they hand them out anymore, but in Boston and I think in other cities, there used to be a newspaper called Metro that was free every day. It was like a 10-page newspaper, and people would be out handing them when I'd go to class. And then there would be a Sudoku and a word puzzle in there. And I always took 8 a.m., 9:15, and 10:30 classes because I like to get everything out of the way and then have my afternoons free and whatnot. And I went ahead and would just take one every day from one of those guys and just do my Sudoku puzzles and my crossword puzzles and not pay attention to what was going on in class.
Fair enough.
Graduated, though.
Yeah.
Not bad. Chris, let's get into reader mail.
Let's do it.
I don't know why we continue to call it reader mail, but we're going to continue to call it reader mail. Remember, if you want to submit questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas, and your inquiries to this show, the only way to do it is on Patreon at patreon.com/CollinsLastStand. Support the show, get early, ad-free access to every show 3 days early, be able to submit your comments like you have here. Many of you do each week on threads we make over on Patreon, and you get exclusive podcasts and all the rest. Your support is essential, and we thank you for it. Jay Drysdale wrote in and said, if Sony, after reviewing the success of the Switch, were to greenlight a Vita 2.0, what in your eyes would a healthy development model look like? Would dedicating some key first-party studios to software make sense, or would second- and third-party relationships be the priority? So I think what Jay's asking us here is that Sony had to pivot its first-party resources quickly away from Vita when it was clear that Vita wasn't worthy, I guess, sales-wise, of those resources. Do you see them going down this road of a handheld again or some sort of hybrid? And if so, how would they support it? Would they do it with robust second and third party support, or would they have to support it with their own studios? Because my assumption is you have to support it at least with some of your own games.
I would imagine if they were ever to go into the handheld market again, they would have to very much follow the blueprint that Nintendo had basically established with the Switch. They can't make like a separate thing that's a handheld. I think that if they're going to make any kind of handheld, it needs to be the PS5. And it needs to be the PS5 that you can take wherever you need to go. And it needs to be integrated into the system. I don't think anybody's really in the market for a separate handheld at this point, especially with just how insanely robust the Switch is. It's got all the first-party titles on it, and it can run just as well on it. I don't foresee a separate, dedicated handheld from Sony anytime soon.
I don't either, and I am really much more enticed by some sort of Switch-like functionality with the PS5 with some device that would come either with the console or be optional with the console but wouldn't run games on its own necessarily. I don't know if that's technically feasible. I don't know if that's financially feasible, but if they were to do it towards the question, you have to come out with first-party games. You can then segue to second-party games. In other words, games developed outside of Sony's studio ecosystem but still published and funded by Sony. I think that would be a good way to go, and they did do that to some extent on Vita with random games like Soul Sacrifice and whatnot, but without first-party resources and without dedication to it, there's simply no reason to do it at all. And so with PS4 and PS5 kind of reverberating through, and PSVR kind of still a thing, and PSVR's second iteration certainly going to be a thing as well, they seem to have other things to focus on. Jorge Palomino wrote into us and said, "Hey guys, thanks for all your hard work. I was thinking about Microsoft and how they probably make money off of Minecraft being on other platforms. I was thinking, would it at all be possible to, let's say, The Last of Us 2 come out and have the multiplayer on all platforms? And would it be a cross-platform game? It would give other users in different ecosystems with only one console a taste of a really great game, and it could broaden the install base for the multiplayer game. Just an idea. Thanks again for everything."
I've always thought that was a fascinating idea, just having like multiplayer components almost follow a Fortnite model where it's free to download on like every platform, but maybe with an exclusive like The Last of Us. Yeah, the campaign, which is obviously the main draw of it, would be exclusive to the PlayStation 4. It's kind of like a new age way of looking at exclusivity in a world where like there's a lot of crossplay and a lot of, you know, almost kind of free to play models coming out. I don't see it happening anytime soon, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that in the future, honestly.
We'll see. I wonder if in this particular analogy or this particular comparison, if Microsoft would be the one holding it up, because would they want Sony's games on their platform? My assumption is they would. But there's a lot of politics, corporate politics behind a decision like this that would need to be overcome.
Also, it would kind of be an ad for PlayStation 4 on an Xbox.
Right, exactly.
So that's also something that they might want to consider.
Now, I have said in the past that I think Nintendo would be wise to put Virtual Console on PlayStation and Xbox, because I think it would allow them to advertise at least their old games and get some money and say, like, if you want the newest Mario, if you want the newest Zelda, you can only play it on Switch, but if you want to play The Legend of Zelda or Mario 3 or something, you play it here on your PS4 if you want. I think there's something really compelling about that, but it's a nice idea, and I think we'll get to a friendlier ecosystem like that. I think we're moving towards a friendlier ecosystem, but exclusives are still what make these consoles run. And if you can't promise the entire exclusive on one console, then it kind of becomes less of an exclusive. And it goes back to what I used to make fun of Microsoft about all the time, where they'd have, and they still did it at this E3, where it's like console exclusive, Xbox exclusive, timed exclusive. It's like, the word exclusive means it's exclusive or it's not. And The Last of Us is an exclusive. You know, I don't think Microsoft really has any exclusives technically anymore, because all their games are on PC, but we know that word in their ecosystem means something different. And I will also say that if Minecraft wasn't already on PlayStation platforms when they purchased, what is the company called?
Mojang?
Mojang, right.
Yeah.
I don't know that it would be on PlayStation.
No, probably not.
I think that they simply had to continue. The real thing is going to be if Minecraft is on PS5. Then we'll see if they really want to play ball or not. But remember,
I don't think they would risk the PR nightmare that would be. I think they're better off just putting it on PS5 and making money off of the people who are playing on Sony platforms than they are taking off a huge share of their audience while also having bad optics.
Sure.
Yeah.
It is very interesting. I've always been of the mind, and I thought it would have been wise. Who the hell knows if I'm right or not? But when Mojang was purchased by Microsoft, I'm like, they should immediately take Minecraft off of the PlayStation Store.
You think that would have done good for Microsoft, though?
I just think it would have been like, you know what? Like, we own this, and we don't want it on our competitor's platform anymore. We wouldn't even be talking about it anymore because it would have happened 5 years ago. But the point is, would it have been financially prudent? I don't know, but they had a huge game. I know Minecraft is still big.
It is the biggest game in the world still.
But it's not part of the zeitgeist anymore. So I don't think putting it in different places is really going to matter as much as it did back in the day. And I think that kind of probably burgeoned Xbox a little bit to say, like, listen, we bought this and you don't see their games on our platform. So why would we do that, you know? Yeah. And I think that there's something to be said about that.
How long ago was that at this point?
I think it's like 5 years ago. I can look.
Yeah, that was a while ago, and I'd imagine that was around the time where the Xbox ecosystem and the PR and the general optics around Xbox was looking particularly grim. I'd imagine that wasn't too far off from the online DRM fiasco. I'd imagine it wasn't that far off from Don Matrick's horrendous pre-E3 console reveal. I just don't think that would have been smart business-wise at all. It would have just hurt. I feel like it just would have hurt him.
Possibly. You're probably right.
And limited the amount, also limited the audience that would be paying money for it.
September 2014.
A year after the launch.
Right. $2.5 billion. And there's only 100 people working at the studio, which is interesting.
Oh, wow.
You would think there would be more. Kevin DeBruin wrote in and said, greetings to both of you duders. First, I just wanted to say that I'm really glad video games has good guys like yourselves that don't actually hate gamers and that aren't just far lefties pushing an agenda. Well, you know, Chris is a left-wing person. Kevin.
I am.
But I'm glad you like the show.
I have an agenda. It's play Doom 2016.
I also have an agenda. Fucking. It's pretty refreshing. So my question has to do with the new God of War and the old God of Wars. While I enjoy them both a lot, I miss the more linear, older God of Wars. Too much choice just turns me off to a game sometimes. What do you guys prefer? More open worlds and more choice, or more linear, concise experiences?
I think with God of War, I rather liked it because I felt I was constantly being pushed along a well-designed and well-thought-out linear path, and only after I started paying attention to like extra like passageways or different like routes was I even aware that the game was open world in the first place. Like, it felt very linear to me for a while before I even knew that it was a proper open world. I don't necessarily think that the new God of War was particularly too burdened by choice. You know what I mean? I was always a fan of more linear kind of experiences. That's why I like really tight shooters like Doom, like I just said. There's something to be said about very tight linear design spaces that are designed with purpose, as opposed to just like kind of like sprawling open worlds where there's large areas that kind of serve no functional purpose in fun or mechanics or anything like that. That's part of my issue with Grand Theft Auto 5, was that there was a lot of places in that game that just weren't fun to be in because the whole point was just to be a real looking city, and that kind of nullified the fact that this is a game and it should be fun. I'm more of a linear guy, but I can enjoy a good open world when it's presented to me.
Fair enough. So I think from a more conceptual standpoint, I was talking to my brother about this. We talked about Zelda Breath of the Wild, and I was talking to him about how my fear with Breath of the Wild, which I think is a vastly overrated game, I've talked about that many times, is that there's no going back. You can't have a normal Zelda game ever again now. And the expectations have been changed. Now every Zelda game is going to be compared about how open in scope this game is, and not about its kind of bona fides as a Zelda game. And so with God of War, I fear that, and I don't really fear because I liked the new God of War. I thought the new God of War was a little too open, a little too obtuse, but I don't think you can ever go back now. And that's kind of the sad thing about trying new things that work, is that even if things that did work back in the day, you can't really go back anymore. So if you made a linear God of War 3 style God of War game after that, people would be like, what the fuck is this? We just got this God of War and now we got this. It would be like making an 8-dungeon Zelda game today and being like, well, you just made this game and now you're going to go back and make this game. It seems like a regression. And from a design and philosophical point of view, that's what scares me about these new games, is that, you know, they're making God of War into something that God of War isn't, which I'm glad about. They made Zelda into something that Zelda isn't, which I'm not glad about. So it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. And I'm afraid that either way, you just can't go back. It's just bigger, it's broader, it's more nonlinear. That's what everyone wants. And I think it's getting a little boring.
The open world kind of thing?
Yeah, like everything has to be open world. Everything has to give you options and dialogue choices and all these kinds of things. I'm like, there are great linear games, dude. Like, I don't need nonlinearity in everything.
God of War to me didn't really particularly feel that open world to me. I don't know what it was about it. I know it was, and I knew that you could go wherever you wanted on the map, but something about the scale of it and the art design, or maybe the context of the story, maybe, that it was such a very heavily story-based game, that made it feel a little bit more like it was, you know, designed with linear intent as opposed to just kind of designed as like Zelda Breath of the Wild, where it was just kind of like a sprawling map and it just kind of felt directionless. I always felt like there was direction in God of War. I didn't really feel that with the original Red Dead Redemption either. I didn't feel that with any of the Grand Theft Autos. I didn't feel that with Breath of the Wild. I did feel it with God of War.
God of War is open world, like Tomb Raider is open world. I think that's kind of the way I look at it. Where
I like those kind of things.
Where
I
it's like
that style.
It's section by section. It's not a true map, but it's like, you know, this section is a little bit open, but this section leads you into the next section, which is a little bit open. And yeah, I think that's what they're going for. And I find those games more manageable myself. Now, that's not only what I want. I want a big open world once in a while. But the point is that everything is falling down this path.
Yeah.
And it's becoming very samey and it's boring. You know, it's becoming boring, not in terms of playing the games themselves, but in terms of like what your expectations are. And it just doesn't feel new and fresh anymore. And I wish that people would embrace linearity again and smaller games again, just to pad it out so we don't only have to play those kinds of games. That not everything needs to be open world. Like Metro Exodus, which I'm really looking forward to, is I think a pretty open world game, but Metro 2033 and Metro Last Light were not. They were
very linear.
They were linear and they gave you some options about how you tackled things, but it wasn't an open world game and it didn't necessitate it. There was no need for me to feel like there was open world or that I needed an open world because I didn't.
Yeah, I think there is an embrace of linearity coming back, but it is also just kind of in the mix with this consistent explosion of open world kind of what feels at this point kind of copycat kind of games.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Kenneth Ohms wrote in and said, any chance you and Chris can go over Capcom's exclusive for Sony called Deep Down that has been in dev hell for years, and they recently renewed the rights to the name, but have said nothing about it. So
I have no idea. What is this?
do you remember Deep Down? Do you remember that?
I remember it vaguely by name alone.
Deep Down was a game that Capcom revealed, I think, the year PS4 was revealed or the year after it was revealed, made in this engine that they created called Panther Ray, which is apparently this really enhanced engine that they were working on. And it was like a dungeon crawling game that was supposed to be pretty hard, maybe like Dark Souls a little bit, exclusive to PS4, maybe free to play. I actually played it. I played it in 2014 in Japan, and I didn't really think it was that great, but it was probably very early. All I can tell you, to your point, Kenneth, is that Capcom did renew the trademark, so the game is still percolating somewhere, but I don't know anything else about it. No one does. No one has heard anything about it really conclusively in some time. Prudvi Muva, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, wrote in and said, "Hello, Colin. So my question is regarding the microtransactions in single-player games brought about by recent Assassin's Creed Odyssey discussions. Based on your experience working in games journalism, is it discouraged to speak about microtransactions in AAA games in reviews? Specifically with time savers, isn't it essentially the game developer accepting their game has pacing issues, and does it not give incentive to make their games intentionally slow and grindy?" Well, I take total issue with that because, and we'll begin with the last things first, some people like grinding in games. I think that that's lost on people. We were talking about Dragon Quest pretty intently in the last few weeks, and Dragon Quest is a grindy game. Dragon Quest, if you didn't have to grind, could be beaten in like an hour. It's not the nature of the game. People want to grind. They want to earn experience points, earn gold, buy better equipment. That's kind of the game. The meta game in there is what people like. And yeah, they're acknowledging that their games are becoming too grindy. I heard Assassin's Creed Odyssey is extremely grindy.
Oh, yeah. Well, it has to be. It has to be if they're going to justify having things that you can pay for to make it easier.
Right, exactly. But the point being is that you don't have to, and I like that
Right.
That's differentiated a little bit.
This is a friend of mine, Lyle. He does video content for Destructoid. We've had this conversation a couple times, and he has a pretty good point about it. And it's like, if there's microtransactions in a single-player game, any mechanic that it's tied to really is just kind of designed to test your patience. That is the point of it. Even if people do like grindy experiences or like grinding up to get to the next level or get the next piece of equipment that they need, in a game with paid microtransactions, especially a single-player one, it is going to be just this level of grind that's like almost egregious, because it has to be. Because otherwise there would be no reason to have this additional marketplace.
That's a good point in the sense that if it's affecting game design at a really fundamental level in order to make these microtransactions feasible, then yeah, maybe there's a problem there. But as long as it's not in multiplayer games, so it's not affecting anyone else's gameplay, and as long as you can do it the normal or natural way, I don't really take issue with it. And, you know, my entire thing about microtransactions generally is that they have a bad rap, and they should have a bad rap because of where they come from, which is the shite fucking mobile market, which I hate with a passion and I've always hated, and always loved that I had these conversations in past years with people where they tried to sell me that the mobile market was the revolution, it was the next big thing, and I just kept saying over and over again, like, the mobile market sucks, the mobile market fucking sucks, the mobile market's ruining everything, no one cares about phone games. Colin was right. But the point ended up being to me in this particular question about the way we review games, and no, I've never heard of anyone being discouraged from mentioning those things, but I certainly can't speak for everybody. And often is the case for people that want to know a little peek behind the curtain is that often online functionality and PSN functionality, for instance, with games wouldn't be active in the review window. They wouldn't be active until the game was live for all. So even if someone wanted to go test Assassin's Creed Odyssey's microtransactions, the chances are that they wouldn't have been able to do it in the review window anyway, because they wouldn't have been active.
Yeah.
So if you're not hearing about them in reviews, I don't think it's as nefarious as you might think. I think it's more that they simply weren't given the option to do that. Hasten Smith wrote into us and said, "Hey guys, I was wondering, with people binge watching TV shows seasons at a time instead of waiting for episodes to come out, the closing of Telltale and Square Enix ditching Hitman, do you think consumers are tired of episodic content?" Chris?
In the context that you have to wait for the next thing to come out, I do think that is a model that is largely going away, just because we live in a very on-demand culture. We can get pretty much anything we want at any given moment. We can stream our music instantaneously. We can, if we have a music video that we want to see, we can pull up YouTube immediately. If we want a show that we can watch, Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime. And especially because we have so much content to sift through that's already finished and already out there. Like, I could watch every episode of Seinfeld in a row right now if I wanted to. So, yeah, I think maybe the idea of having episodic content that you had to wait for back when Netflix was kind of starting to be a huge force in the entertainment industry, maybe that would have been kind of like a novel idea back then. But yeah, I think ultimately people just, you can't expect to hold people's attention when there's so much out there consistently, periodically. You have to have everything out there, I feel, if you're going to compete in a market that's so saturated with so much quality stuff, to be quite frank. There's a lot of great TV out there now. There's a lot of great games coming out, and you can't demand people's sequential attention every couple months just because you couldn't put something out in one solid chunk.
Yeah, I don't understand the episodic approach. I never did. It's what turned me off from playing most of the Telltale games because I'd be like, oh, I'd wait till that's done and then I'll play it. But
it was the reason why I didn't. It was the reason why I didn't play Hitman until the whole thing was out. Like, why would I do that?
I understand and appreciate that they wanted to experiment, and the experiments probably went well or didn't go well depending on the company and the game you're talking about and the time period you're talking about. I will give it up to Hulu, who continues to do week by week episodic releases of their shows, because I only watch one show on there, which is The Handmaid's Tale, and they do that, which is fucking annoying. But I am of the mind and have been of the mind and continue to be of the mind that I don't want to watch any TV shows anymore until they're all done. Like the season's done. Like I just absorb things like that. So even if there's network television that I'm into or interested in, I'll wait until it's done. Like that show about the missing airplane that comes back after 5 years. I can't remember what it's called. The Passenger or The Manifest or something like that. The Manifest. Like that sounds interesting, but I'm like, I'll literally just buy that on Amazon for $30. I'm not even going to DVR it. I don't care. Like I just wait and then watch it in a day. I don't need to like dedicate 8 p.m. on Tuesdays for fucking 12 or 14 weeks to this.
Yeah. I think especially with people like us who have very, very unpredictable kind of workflows and work schedules, it's very much not set on a 9 to 5 kind of, hey, we're going to be doing this from the, you know what I mean? Like the schedule, it's not quite like a 9 to 5 where we can come home and we check out and like, hey, that show's going to be on at 8. I have the free time to do that. No, not really.
Right.
You know, at 8 p.m. I'm working. At 2 a.m. I'm working.
Exactly.
You know, and I want something to watch whenever I feel like it on the background if I want.
Tyler Payne wrote into us and said, hey, Colin and Chris, thanks for giving me such an awesome podcast every Friday and more recently every Tuesday since I became a patron a few weeks ago.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your support, Tyler. I assume you guys have seen in the news that Microsoft is close to buying Obsidian, a developer of some amazing games such as Fallout New Vegas and Pillars of Eternity. I was wondering how you guys feel about this, because for me, I'm afraid this means Microsoft will try to make Obsidian's games Xbox exclusives. Well, of course they will, which will not fare well for the diehard PlayStation-only gamers like myself. I'm just a little worried about one of my favorite devs being picked up by one of SIE's biggest competitors. What are your thoughts? Well, this is a rumor that I think started on Kotaku a week or two ago. I didn't report it on the last episode of Sacred Symbols because it's not PlayStation-centric, and I don't personally think it's a huge deal. There are 2 Obsidian games that I like, and that's basically it. And I'm not shitting on them because they make games that people love, but I loved Fallout New Vegas, which is arguably the best Fallout game.
Yeah.
And I loved South Park: Stick of Truth, which they made. And I think that they deserve a lot of credit for those games, but I'm certainly not going to be broken up by Microsoft picking them up. And I think that, you know, Microsoft is wise to get in bed with a role-playing game developer, especially because Lionhead is no more. Sony should pay attention and get a similar studio if they feel like they need one, because they don't really have a role-playing centric studio either. But I saw that news and I was like, it's not really a huge deal. That is, by the way, though, by far the most substantial studio that they would have purchased in the last year if that purchase goes through.
I think it's a smart move, personally, but like, of course they're going to try and get exclusives out of them. That's like why you buy studios.
Yeah, I mean that's not a question. If Microsoft buys Obsidian, you're not going to see Obsidian games on PlayStation.
Yeah, I mean it's annoying to see that sometimes. Like I remember it was really annoying as like a Bungie fan to see like when Destiny came out, like there would be timed exclusive content for the first year for Destiny. I was like, that's irritating, especially because obviously Bungie's history with Xbox is pretty storied, but you know, it's Obsidian. I'm kind of on the boat with you where the only games I really like were Fallout New Vegas, and I didn't play The Stick of Truth, but I've heard pretty good things about it. I'm not particularly broken up about the idea that they're going to have exclusive games come out for this, whatever the next Xbox system is going to be. In fact, I think it's just a smart business move, honestly.
We'll see.
They're smart to do that.
It depends on how much they're going to pay. And again, still a rumor.
Yeah, it hasn't even gone through yet as far as we know. So
we'll see. We'll see how it goes. 5 more questions, Chris, that I brought up that we will answer before we wrap this episode of Sacred Symbols up.
Sounds good.
Put a bow on it and send it out to the peoples. Dino Diadamo. God, that's a fucking Italian
Dino
name.
D'Adamo?
Dino D'Adamo. Yeah, I guess so. You're right. You're
yeah.
always correcting me. Okay, thank God someone is. Yo, Colin and Chris, I was curious to know where you guys stand on local multiplayer split screen versus online multiplayer. I myself am 28 years old, born 1990, so I grew up around the same time as you guys, and local multiplayer was a big part of console gaming, ranging from titles of GoldenEye, Contra, Twisted Metal 2, Fighting Force, and more. Over the years, less and less multiplayer games offered a local multiplayer option and instead online only. It should be, Dino, fewer and fewer multiplayer games, because you can count them. Call it nostalgia, but I miss that experience of playing local multiplayer, whether that be head-to-head, co-op, or a CPU/online. If there wasn't a single multiplayer game ever made ever again, I wouldn't care. So this isn't a question
Colin's
for me at all.
Yeah. The problem with split screen that I find is I specifically remember when Halo Reach came out, which was like the most recent Halo game to have split screen that wasn't 4. It was like 2010 or whatever. I noticed immediately that the quality of the game the frame rate went down, like tanked, because the game's having to render this now presumably 720 to 1080p environment 4 times. On the same engine in the same console that has like 536 megabytes of RAM. It hurts the experience overall. So I feel like modern games, especially split screen, probably is a concession that you're gonna kind of have to make to have games function all at 60 frames per second or at the resolution that you want. I would love for them to figure out a way to make split screen run at the resolution that we can normally have normal games run at. But it just seems like it's not really all that plausible right now. I would love to be proven wrong. I miss it, personally. But based on what I played, some of the more recent split-screen games I've played, my God, I can't do that.
It's just not for me.
It runs so poorly.
There are some multiplayer games that I've fallen into. I liked Overcooked. I played that locally, for instance. But I don't know. I'm not the guy to ask about that. Although, as a young man, I did enjoy my multiplayer games, specifically on N64. Albert Escobar wrote in and said, "What's the deal with my brain refusing to function in an FPS? Colin, I remember you mentioned this a few years ago. Kind of funny. I was playing one night, everything was fine, then all of a sudden I was getting confused with the stick controls. I stopped, went back a few minutes later, and everything was fine again. Have you experienced this again? I do play with inverted Y-axis." I wanted to bring this question up because this has happened to me, and what he's referencing did happen to me. It happened to me in the fall of 2014. Actually, I was still at IGN. I went to play Far Cry 4 at Ubisoft, and I couldn't play it. Like, there was something where I was like, I invert Y, I play Y inverted, and nothing felt right. It didn't feel right for me to play it normal. It didn't feel right for me to play inverted. And it was this weird 2-month lull where I was having a really hard time playing first-person games because I'm like, nothing feels right to me anymore. And I remember the time frame because it happened when Borderlands 2 came out on Vita around that same time. I couldn't play it. And it happened when Destiny came out, which I just couldn't figure it out. There was something in my brain that wasn't functioning, and then suddenly I sat back down and it worked again. Like, I was just like, oh, I'm good again.
That's insane.
It was really scary because I think I was being dramatic at the time, but I remember talking to people being like, I don't think I can play games anymore. Like, there's something in my brain that will not function.
Yeah, like your brainstem like wiggled a little bit loose.
Exactly. Like, I played Y inverted my whole life. Like, that's what makes sense to me. I don't know why. I can't explain it. But when neither worked for me,
wrong.
A lot of people, it comes from flight sims, but that's not that's not where I got it from. I don't know why. I mean, the way I've always pointed at is it makes perfect sense to stick stick a stick in the back of your head, and I push it down to look up, and I push it up to look down. That makes sense to me. And that's what I do with my sticks, So if you're playing first person or controlling a camera, that's presumably controlled by somebody, which is third person. But I just wanted to bring that up because that's funny that you remember that, because that really did happen to me, and it was horrifying. It was like a horrifying time in my life. It was an existential crisis.
That has never happened to me. I have never had that problem. But I play a lot of FPSs, and like arguably like I spent the majority of the time that I've spent playing games in FPSs, so it's kind of rooted into my brain at this point. But I don't think that's ever happened to me.
It happened. Or it's embarrassing rather that it happened at Ubisoft when I was playing Far Cry 4. Although I remember the gameplay being fine or whatever, but maybe that's why they don't want to work with us, because they remember that.
It's that guy that can't figure out how to look in any given direction.
That's the guy that pretends he plays video games. Dan Flynn wrote into us and said, let's say someone time traveled here from the year 1985 when NES was out. If you had only one game you could show them to represent games in the present, which would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh, I have to think about this. What do you...
What am I trying to show them? Am I trying to show them what people are playing today? Because then I would show them something like Fortnite.
No.
If I wanted to show them what I think is the pinnacle of video games today, or what I think the pinnacle of video games could be if they could sit down and play it and understand time and stuff, maybe BioShock, maybe The Last of Us. You know, if I wanted to show them a beautiful open world, maybe I'd show them Dying Light or Fallout 4. It really depends. I would love to show them Mega Man 9 and 10 just to show them that, hey, like,
Yeah.
not much has changed in some ways. What would you show them? Do you know?
Yeah, I'd probably show them The Last of Us. That would be a jarring experience. BioShock's like one of my pinnacle games. Best game, one of the best games ever, but I think just on a sheer like culture shock level, like I'm bringing you from the 80s and I want you to see what a video game looks like now, I would probably show them The Last of Us.
Yeah, I think that's a good option. I think it's a good option.
Or Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh.
Because it looks insanely beautiful.
I'll tell you. We'll talk more about Red Dead Redemption, I think, next week. But the videos out there look absolutely gorgeous for it. No doubt about it.
I haven't played it. I've just seen trailers.
No, I know. I'm not trying to cover for you. I'm just reminding everyone that we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I have these little misadventures in my mind sometimes where I'm like, what if you took Thomas Jefferson to the present and like showed him what was going on? Or you took like a really technical minded person like Benjamin Franklin and then showed him all the things we use today. Would they understand it?
I don't think so.
If I gave him an iPhone and I sat him down in front of a computer and explained, not like just instantaneously, but if we had time to tell him what happened and how these things work and function, would Benjamin Franklin in a few weeks be using the internet or something like that?
I don't think so.
You know?
No. Because I think about it like this. Like, if I was taken, well, how many years? To 200 years into the future? I think I'd be lost.
Yeah, more than that.
I think at 100. No. Put me down. I should not be here. This is a crime against the deities.
I'd be interested. Danny Atkinson wrote in and said, Colin, Soul Calibur 6 has an RPG-esque story mode in it where you level up your own created character while progressing through the story. Would the implementation of this mode in this and other fighting games make fighting games more accessible to you in concept? Well, Danny, I don't find fighting games inaccessible. I've played quite a few fighting games, and I'm pretty good at some fighting games. This is interesting to me, but actually, no, that's not what I'm going into a fighting game looking for. I'm going into a fighting game looking for fun characters to play and for all things being equal kind of matches that are about matchups and skill. So, no, that would personally not make fighting games more appealing to me.
Well, I'm looking forward to finally getting my hands on Soul Calibur 6. Not even to play it, but just to mess around with this character creator that everybody's been having like a ton of fun with.
Yeah, I'm seeing some disturbing things online.
Oh, it's great. I saw some guy make SpongeBob. It was beautiful. One of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
The soul still burns, as it turns out.
Yeah.
Final question / comment / concern comes from Niall Prendergast, who says, backwards compatibility can go fuck itself. And that's in all capital letters.
That's hot. That's a hot take.
An exclamation point. Hey guys, I'm sure I'm in the minority when I say that I couldn't give a shit that PS4 doesn't play PS3 and older games. To frame this, let me ask you a question. Has there ever been a time in the PS4's life where you have said there's nothing to play or nothing coming to the PlayStation Store this week, or the crux of this is I've got some free time, I wish I could play Amy on PS4, Amy's a PS3 game, rather than the myriad games I have at my disposal? Why would you spend time playing old games you haven't played, which would mean they weren't that important to you back then, or want to replay, considering so many of the greats have had an HD collection or some sort of port already, when there are so many great games on PS4, we don't even have the time to play now? Like I said, unpopular opinion, but I think a valid one, and one that I think we should keep in mind when we look at the feature prioritization for PS5. I think you're really wrong there, but
yeah, no,
you're wrong for a million reasons, by the way. Yeah. But I don't know where to begin with that. But Chris,
I'll put it to you this way: if PS5 were to come out, right, and they told you, Niall, hey, you can't play any of your PlayStation 4 games anymore. You just can't. You're gonna have to buy a whole new library. Any old PS4 games that you want to play, you have to wait for a remaster. And then you have to pay for that remaster, even though you've already owned or paid for the PS4 version of that game. Would that be a good thing to you? Would that be like... I'd imagine that you'd be like, no, what? That's ridiculous. And the same reason applies. And like, there have been times where I'm like, yeah, I don't know what to play. Because up until recently, there's been kind of a drought. You know, it wasn't until like probably Spider-Man. We had God of War in Detroit, but that's like, what are you going to... How often are you going to replay those? You know, those are... one time through at max, like personally. Even though I love God of War, I'm never going to touch that game again. I know, and I'm going to touch the sequel, but I'm never going to go back. So there was a long period, several months, where there was just nothing to play, and I thought, oh man, I wish I could play War of the Monsters. You know, oh man, I wish I could play Crash Team Racing. Oh boy, it sure would be nice to be able to play the Metal Gear Solid series on the PlayStation 4 when you can play them on the Xbox One and not the PS4. Like, that's baffling to me. That'd be like if you could play the Halo series on the Wii, but not the new Xbox. Like, that's baffling to me.
It doesn't make sense. I just don't agree with that assessment at all. It's bad optically. It's bad in terms of a set of features that you want to offer in a potential new audience. It's a way to provide inherent and immediate value to people's consoles if they have hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands sometimes of dollars worth of games that they go back and play. I think that's a silly outlook. I respect, Niall, that that's your opinion. You also acknowledge that it's a minority opinion. I think it is. There are plenty of times that I want to play old games, and I don't only or always skip old games because they were not that important to me. Sometimes you just have to move on, and then things just fall by the wayside, and you forget they exist.
Some games I didn't even know about.
Exactly. It's called giving players options, and I think the more options, the better.
Yeah.
So,
and I think the way console manufacturing has been going, we've kind of seen this trend of making new systems that allow your old stuff to run better. So imagine the PS5 being able to run your PS4 games better. Imagine your PS5 being able to run your PS4 Pro games better than your PS4 Pro can. Like, that's great. Like, that's a great thing to offer your consumer base. I don't see why you would not want that, personally.
I mean, dollars to donuts, the PS5 is going to play PS4 games. The question is if it's going to play anything older than that, and I'm not convinced that it will. We'll see. But if it doesn't play PS4 games, that's going to be a massive problem, and that's going to be an Xbox One reveal size problem for Sony. So you better hope against hope, if you're a PlayStation fan, that's something that they don't do.
I think we're pretty safe on that front.
I think so, too. There's just no way. Making PS3 games operate is going to be a different story entirely, and I'm still convinced that they can emulate PS3 on PS4, so I don't see why they are PS5. I think they can do it on PS4 too. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
As always. But Chris, that's all the questions we have.
Oh, look at that.
From the audience today. We appreciate you guys submitting them. Remember, you can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. Again, it gives you early ad-free access 3 days early to every episode of this show. You can get exclusive podcasts. You can support the other shows by doing that as well. You get Q&As. You get the ability to submit questions. You get to vote on show topics. There's a lot of stuff going on Patreon, and your support there is essential to us continuing to do this show and for me continuing to do my other shows. So I appreciate that very much. Chris, you have any big plans for the rest of the week?
Hopefully finishing up these like 4 different edits, and that's about it. It's gonna be a very crunch week.
Well, you don't want that
100-hour work week ahead of me.
You don't want that. Don't do it. You're not allowed to be passionate.
I'm gonna unionize. I'm gonna unionize myself.
Yeah, unionize yourself
to myself.
Well, Chris, thank you for your time. I'll let you get back to your work.
Of course, man.
I'm gonna get back into my work, into these games that I have to play. But we'll see you next week for more Sacred Symbols. We appreciate you. We'll see you then.
Take care.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is fan-supported over at patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. The following names are at the producer level or higher on Patreon, and I want to thank you from the very bottom of my heart for your incredible kindness and generosity. Martin Beck, Fred Bentz, Michael Betts, Eric Bishop, David Blodel, Mark Boggio, Spencer Brand, Isaac Brewer, Lennon Brixey, Matthew Brousseau, Josh Bushing, Austin Bullock, Andrew Burkhart, Dylan Burns, Alex Cabrera, Brian Cacciatolo, Will Caldwell, Jason Camargo, Luis Cancato, William O'Carroll, Matthew Carter, William Cashel, Brian Chand, Travis Chandler, Sean Chandler, Kenneth Char, David Chestnut, Steve Clifford, Simon Conception Jr., Brad Cooley, Cutter Crow, Nick Cummings, Daniel Diamore, Daniel Delanikos, Travis Depew, Mitchell Durkash, David Ellis, Albert Escobar, Brian Fink, Joe Finelli, Eric Finkenbeiner, Stefano Fontana, Photios Frangos, Connor Gazian, Alexander Gates, Michael Gates, Salem Ghanem Al Ghanem, Daniel Glassford, Tyler Goodwin, David S. Graham, Josh Gravelick, Ryan Greenwood, Miranda Grubba, Andres Guzman, Tyler Harris, Asa Haas, Azan Isa Al Raisi, Josh Yeager, Paul Joyce, Greg Juliffs, Jeremy Key, John Klott, Kevin Komaki, Taylor Christian Laudrin, Christian Larson, Jackson Lastuka, Donald Laws, Joe Lawson, Don Q. Lee, Ashlyn Lee, Anthony Lencioni, Patrick Leslie, Dustin Lewis, Keith Adrian Lewis, Chad Lewis, Mark Liberto, Aaron Litwiller, Lewin Ray Loper, Josh M., Ryan T. Mandel, Joe McPartland, Wyatt McVeigh, Albert Miranda, Patrick Malloy, Betty Ann Moriarty, Abe Mukhtar, Brian Nietzsche, Josh Netzel, Adam Nix, Brian Ott, Jorge Palomino, Todd Paxton, Brendan Peavy, Marius Scarson Peterson, Enrique Perez, Eric A. Peterson, Jason Pettit, Lawrence F. Prokop, Eric R. Pryor, Michael Renner, Peter Reynolds, Jonathan Rice, Toby D. Riemenschneider, Austin Riley, Ramon Rodriguez Jr., Petro Rose, A.G. Rowe, Matthew Savoy, John Schultz, Chris Schaefer, Toby Shootman, Riley Smith, Gerard Stewave, Steven Summingut, Ahmad Tamar, Ben Thompson, Carl Tolman, Tam Tran, Dan Vale, Adam Van Kuren, Oakley Waldron, Justin Wagaman, Dade Michael Edward Wendt, Mike Wayant, Tyler Woodall, Corey Wyatt, Tony Zaniga, Casual Misfits Gaming, Supershot ST, Mad Mock Media, Beric, Mubarak, Richter86, Dav9834, Chris, Wyatt Henry, Donk 2015, and Random Guy Radio.